Hello and welcome to another episode. In today's episode, I talked to my friend Amit, who is a builder and loves everything tech. And in this episode, we talk about the Russia-Ukraine war, the tech used in it, the hypocrisies of Indian parents, religion, what it means to be a fun communist, alternatives to capitalism, and so much more. I had so much fun filming this, and I had such a laugh. Amit, if you're watching this, I had so much fun. And without further ado, here is Amit. Yes. You know what's weird about this, right? It's like one of your projects, right? When you did the Ark, I'm doing this, and it feels so similar.
I know. Like the number of moving parts that you have to take care of is much higher than the Ark, by the way. Like the number of things that go wrong on yours is so much higher. So kudos.
Yeah.
Like I would not attempt it. So fucking well done.
Why not? Why wouldn't you attempt a
Yeah,
podcast?
because we've tried podcasting. Like we had this thing that we ran for I think about 4 or 5 episodes, and I remember that after the first or the second one, we got a bunch of feedback from people who said you should improve these things, and all of them were related to editing. Like, I'm not like just no, this is what you get. You get it or you don't get it. And by the fourth episode, the quality fell like a rock. Like we
Really?
stopped giving a shit completely.
Okay, I see. It does
Because
require an insane level of consistency.
yeah, consistency and also persistence, because one of the things that will happen is that after you're done with the footage, you'll have to listen to it a couple of times before you figure out what you want and what you don't.
Yeah.
And I like hearing my own voice, but after a point I'm like, please just die. Like stop talking.
Oh man, I know what you mean. But like, let's start with. I'd actually love to hear more about the Ark. So I was looking at. I remember like seeing that video for the first time of you finishing the Ark, your little project,
I know.
and I was just beaming because I was like, he did it. He did it. Like
It
I was so
worked.
happy
It
for him.
worked. And I think the reason I'm very happy is because all of it worked. Like every part of the step just worked. It wasn't
Yeah.
like it was failing through it. And the reason I'm fascinated by lighting is right that I think growing up, for some reason, India is really bad at lighting. Like everyone has
It
those white lights
is.
in the house, like those horrible white lights everywhere. And I'm like, they don't look good. They've never looked good. They're bad for your eyes. They're bad for your attention span, all of that. But they're everywhere.
Yeah.
And the
Absolutely.
arc was supposed to be a way of sort of offsetting that, where if you put it on your work desk, my idea was that I get all access to all the colors and I can do whatever the fuck I want. So initially, when I took it up, I thought, how hard could it be? It's just like a simple fucking light. Mother of God, it took 100 hours to print. And the thing with the 3D printer is, every time you print something, you don't know whether it will actually come out. Like there is a level of it's an equilibrium that is very unbalanced. Like it works when it does, but if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And yeah, like it's painfully great. Like I can feel the dopamine once it's done, but through the process, there is a reason that when you see the videos, right? I don't
Yeah.
actually go into the details of at least the arc, because there were a number of times where I went, "Oh my god, what the fuck am I doing?" Which I should do. I should do a blooper reel. It's great. The arc falls over a couple of times while I'm assembling it. The LED strip
Oh.
flies off. I'm like, okay, is it still working? It is. It is still working.
What made you want to create the Ark?
So
Yeah.
the biggest thing I think would be the fact that I wanted something that had a number of LEDs in it, which is insurmountable in the way that they work out. This has about 432 LEDs, which is a fuckload. Like this thing is drawing about 2.5 to 3 amps of electricity, which is a considerable amount for a piece of lighting that is on your desk. And this is give or take equivalent to any of these bigger LED, the actual tube lights that we have. So I'm trying to make tech that is similar to that in terms of quality, which someone somewhere in a factory has to make. So I'm like, but if I could pull it off in my house, that is really good engineering. Because the idea that all of us have is that consumer electronics are built by a team of like 100 people somewhere in the corner of the world. You need big machines to do it. What if you don't? What if you could make your fucking smartphone in your house? Obviously, that was still far away from that in some capacity. But what if you could? So the arc works
Yeah.
really well for that. I'm like, I wouldn't ever buy lighting again. I'll just make my own at this point. Why should I
Mm-hmm.
buy it when I can make a better version?
That's
And
true.
the interesting thing, actually, I would love to actually see if someone like you made it, because imagine one of the things that automatically translates, right? Like I'm looking at
Mm-hmm.
the Ark with all of the experience that I have with tech. If someone who's a UI UX person sees it, they'll have 100 different things that would be a take that I've never actually figured out. And that is the same
Yeah,
thing that applies to someone who might not work with the same media in the same way. So yeah, I
for
think my
sure.
biggest reason for Arc or all of the prototypes is, why can't you build it in your house?
Hmm. And you want to, where do you want to take the arc? So you're doing these projects for a reason, right?
So they're sort of all building up to the lightsaber, at least for the moment. Like that is my Moby Dick at
Mm-hmm.
this point. Like, when will you finish? Because the thing that happened with the lightsaber, right? So I'll show you this thing, which is actually the bluebirds. This was supposed to be a set of PCBs that I made. This is one of them. This
Mm-hmm.
is supposed to be lightsaber PCBs. I have them in like 5 colors, which is also sad, considering that
Mm-hmm.
I can't use them anymore. This is a PCB that's uh, like too old at this point to use, and I made them, and I was like, I am moving closer, I'm so close to the lightsaber, I will put this together. And then you realize you won't, like it just doesn't work. Like you could, but the amount of effort required is not worth the payoff with these. And that hurts, because the thing that I realized with hardware is that every time you fail, you fuck up a physical component. Like that thing
Hmm.
is gone, you can't use it, or you have to move on to
Oh.
something else. Yeah,
Hmm.
like if you fry something, it's dead. If you can't use a
Yeah.
PCB, you can't. You have to make a new PCB. There is no, yeah, I will use this in some way. No, it's gone. Find something else.
Yeah.
And that is something that I think is hard to get past. So what I'm trying to do right now is to get to the lightsaber. I'm building up a set of skills to be able to do that. And that applies for
Mm-hmm.
all toys in general, where I need to be able to work with something like lithium ion, which is there in all our devices. Like everything
Mm-hmm.
that is rechargeable has lithium ion in it. I need to be able to
Mm-hmm.
work with charging those lithium ions in an efficient way. Because if you
Mm-hmm.
have any sort of toy or electronic instrument around you, if it charges too slow, you're not going to touch it. Like if I told
Right.
you like your headphones will take 2 days to charge, you're like, I don't want them anymore. At some point, you'll stop using
Hmm.
them. And that is complicated tech. Like that is a lot of things that I have to know to be able to do that. And I think the
Yeah.
biggest thing that actually I've realized every time I build something out is that I learn 100 different things that I didn't even know that I wanted to learn. So as an example, with
Hmm.
something like the Arc right now, diffusion is an insane amount of engineering when it comes to how lighting design works out. Like depending on the
Okay.
material that you put in the front of the thing and the distance between the
Yeah.
light and the material changes the way that the colors look, the amount of light that you get, and even besides that, the way the surface of anything that you have works out in the end. And I assumed, yeah, sure, this would be a part of it, but I didn't know how big an impact this would be. So
Hmm.
again, for something like the lightsaber or any of the things that I'm making, I'm like, every time I go down the road, 100 different things come up, which I'm like, I didn't even know they existed. So there's this other thing that I was making right now. I think you would like this one. It's a spider. It's literally
Hmm.
like, uh, you remember the Black Mirror dog, right? That was basically a
Yeah.
four-legged thing. So the spider is give or take exactly that. Like it's a mech that's supposed to have 4 joints, and
Uh-huh.
it's supposed to
No
go.
way.
Yeah, it's supposed to go like crawly, 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 and it
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
wave at you and shit like that. So the thing with this was, right, like this was one of the early projects that I took up, like way before the
Uh-huh.
arc. I was like, I'll make this. How hard could it be? Like I'll just make a robot. And I got it to this point because 3D printed parts, motors, and all of that, servos. And I got to this, and the next stage after this was actually integrating the electronics inside of it, like putting in
Hmm.
the microcontroller that'll make the brain and everything work. And what I realized
Hmm.
is that at this point, there's an entire field that's there, which I didn't know that existed. It's called reverse kinematics or something. And
Mm-hmm.
the idea of kinematics is when you and I walk or we do a movement, like let's say I touch my headphones, I move my hand, the
Mm-hmm.
joints make a movement, right? And that is an
Yeah.
entire field of science which is called kinematics. I'm like, I didn't know that's a thing. And I'm like, I don't know fucking kinematics. I barely even known this was a field of study. Like that is an entire fucking field of study where people are doing university degrees and shit to just learn that. And I'm like, oh
Yeah.
shit, I didn't know that's a thing. And that is the reason I'm getting appreciation for every prototype that I build. Like I'm realizing that engineering has these fucking subfields and sub
Yeah.
these specializations that If you figure out even like 5 to 10% of it, you can make wild shit. So at some point, the spider will get made, but I don't know at what point I'll have the skill to be able to pull it off. So everything builds up to something else. And while I'm doing it, at some point I realize maybe I'm not supposed to be doing that. So maybe the lightsaber will change into something bigger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I always find this with, regardless of whichever project I'm in, like, right, the when you're working on these projects, whether it be hardware, whether it be software, there's so many points of failure. One of them is like knowing what to do. Like most people say, I'm going to create an app, and they have no freaking idea. Hardware is the exact same thing, and the cost of failure is either you look like a dickhead in like, let's say in me podcasting, for instance, I just look like a complete dickhead if I fail, and but with each one, like the failure points are so similar. Patience is definitely another one. Like patience and persistence and like sticking with it
100%.
is so important.
So critical. So
But
critical.
yeah, and like, what are the failure points of hardware? Do you say so? Like, I'm just curious.
So many.
Like, if
Okay, so one is do not be sleep deprived, which I say and I continue to repeatedly do, because with hardware, right, the biggest thing that you'll work with is a power supply. So something
uh-huh.
somewhere will be powering your electronics, and you have to connect the right set of wires. So almost nothing when it comes to connecting wires is actually that critical. Like when you mess up something, you can always disconnect it and reconnect it to the right place. The only thing that you can't fuck up is the power supply lines. Like the ground and the
Hmm.
power supply, you do not fuck up. Like if you
Hmm.
fuck that up, you burn the thing. And the thing is, if you're sleep deprived, they're tiny holes, you don't see the right one, and you put it somewhere where it's not supposed to go, and it's gone. Like the thing is fried, and you will see magic
Ah.
smoke. That one of the things that hardware enthusiasts have as a common idea is that when you see or smell the magic smoke, you did it. You burnt your thing. And with electronics, it's also very like you would expect to be like brimstone fire, like something that goes boom or some sort of sound. Nothing. You just have like a tiny amount of smoke, and it'll smell like shit, and it's gone. The thing is dead.
Yeah, and all
So
your
that I think
yeah,
is the biggest, what do you call that? The thing that you don't want. Like magic smoke is when you
frustration.
go, it hurts, it
Yeah,
hurts, it hurts.
yeah.
Like that. The first time you have magic smoke, it will hurt. You'll be like, I killed something. I killed a thing. The second I think is oriented around patience for sure. Like the number of times you'll have something that requires you to be very still. Like soldering, I have now gotten to the point that I don't completely hate it. Basically,
Hmm.
everyone, when they start with soldering, it's a really bizarre idea, right? You have to touch a piece of metal with another piece of metal, put another piece of metal on top, everything melts exactly
Hmm.
right. And if it does, if it happens well, it works. If it doesn't happen well, you have
Hmm.
this blob sitting there looking at you. It looks like
Hmm.
shit, it doesn't work. Plus, it smells like you're getting lead poisoning every time you're doing it a little bit. You're killing your brain and all that.
Damn.
So the patience aspect works really well. Like just sitting there, calming your breath, all of that, making sure that you understand it's possible that it will fail, but you will follow the instructions, you will look at it. So there are 100 different guides you'll find about hardware. But again,
Hmm.
you won't know you have to read one till you fuck it up. So for
Hmm.
everything that you have to learn, you will have to fuck up to understand. Ah, let's not do that ever again. And I think another thing that really hurts about hardware for someone who's starting out right now, I think this gets easier and it's getting easier for me over time, is just finding the right components, because
Hmm.
um, the number of things that get released in hardware are a lot, because there's a lot of
Hmm.
companies that build components. But one, the naming conventions are weird because everyone has their own. So
Hmm.
knowing what is the right thing that solves a specific purpose takes a bit of time to
Hmm.
figure out. So as an example, what let's say if you wanted to build a smartwatch tomorrow, where do you start? Like what should be the computer, what should be the screen, like how do you even start thinking about it? If you wanted
Hmm.
to build something like a heart monitor, how do you do that? We
Hmm.
don't know. Figure it out.
Yeah.
And that really hurts, because with software everything is still relatively standardized. With hardware there's none of that, because most of the hardware products are made by either really small teams or by
Yeah.
individuals, and they're iterated over a long duration. So the documentation is everywhere. It's very unclear. So
Hmm.
those are the biggest three, I think. One, if someone does start on hardware, my biggest concern would be before they start, why are you doing it? Because if you're doing it for commercial reasons, it will hurt really hard. Like, if someone is passionate about it, I'm like, you will persist. But if you're trying to do it to make money, yeah, at some point you'll be like, there are much easier things to do.
You actually fed in perfectly to the question I had. Like, why endure the pain of trying to create
Oh,
something from
yeah,
nothing?
why endure the pain
Like,
of doing hardware?
why endure the
So,
pain?
I think my reason for enduring pain is because I got really good at software, and there's only so much you can do, right? Like, let's say you
Mm-hmm.
build the best app in the universe, like something that
Mm-hmm.
has all of the things exactly as they're supposed to be. It is the cleanest user experience. Everyone who looks at it and interacts with it is like, I am happy. It goes away when the screen is off. God, it's dead.
Mm-hmm.
There is no living existence of the thing. You could spend $10 million doing it, but at the end of the day, it doesn't exist in the real world. It's just a bunch of pixels on
Hmm.
the screen with a database at the end, and it's gone. And that is the thing that I found with hardware that you don't have. Like the Arc lamp, if you look at it in terms of parts, the total parts cost came out to something like 5 grand, right? But it
Hmm.
takes over my entire desk. It will light my room for fucking, I don't know, however long it exists for. It also
Hmm.
physically exists in the world. I'm like, it beats most of the dopamine that I got from making apps. Like, I could work on an
Hmm.
app for a year, and at the end of it, I would go, hey, look at this. And nobody cares. Fucking hell. I know they should, but most of them would be like, and so what? I have 100 other apps. So I'm like, that is why I don't
I,
want to do the harder thing, because I'm like, you can't fucking say fuck off to an arc because it's there.
like I can just see every person that builds app or software just so resonating with this, because especially if it's a B2C product, and I
Nobody
feel this a
cares. Like, it's
lot.
so
Nobody
hard.
gives a shit. Nobody gives a shit.
Not
Like
even the
they'll just
people
come.
next to you who are building it with you give a shit. Like, the client doesn't give a shit. You don't give a shit. The team doesn't give a shit. It hurts. You're like, I spent every day on this. Nobody cares.
Man, I know. It's like, and the amount of effort and dedication and research you put into
Yeah.
this, and then a good design with apps is like you don't notice it at all a lot of the time. Even if you make it beautiful, sometimes the beauty isn't a good thing. Like it distracts you from the core experience, and people get sick of beauty very quickly. If the interface is really well designed but doesn't have that functionality, people just don't care. I noticed this, and I work in edtech, right? It is so hard to make people stick beyond after the 30-second mark of them downloading the app. Like 70-80% of people just drop off
Drop off.
on
Yeah.
apps, and it's crazy how common that is in the industry. But
Exactly.
there is that sense of satisfaction though when you push something out into the world and it's real, and I
Exactly.
can
That is
appreciate that.
exactly.
Yeah.
And the thing with apps is I had that. Like, for the longest time, there was a level of, like, I made this, look at it and all that. But it was
Hmm.
really hard to translate it to other people, because if you make it and you're proud of it, at the end of the day, it doesn't
Hmm.
matter if anybody else doesn't give a shit. Which I had for the longest time with digital. I think the point where it sort of stopped was one, I realized that software has also reached a level of maturity at this point where I'm like, it's getting to the point where it will be automated. Like, I can see in the next year some fucker somewhere with a team of people creating the chat GPT variation of do a prompt, it will generate a version 1 UI, which might not be
Hmm.
perfect, but I'm pretty sure it will beat whatever the fuck I did in an hour. Like, I could
Hmm.
spend probably a week building something. There will be like someone who builds a chat GPT model with Mid Journey or a instance of what do you call that, stable diffusion attached to it, which creates
Hmm.
something that's not horribly bad. I'm like, that's a week of work, sure. And I'm like, I don't want to live through my own depreciation. I can see that happening because
Hmm.
it's going to happen. And the second problem was that I think, at least with the app thing, most of the people don't understand all of the things that it takes, right? Like with
Hmm.
hardware, at least one of the things I realize is nobody has a fucking idea as to how the arch works. Like,
Yeah.
they don't know shit.
It's
They're
just
like,
figuring
I
out
barely
everything from
understand what
scratch.
electricity is. I
Yeah.
don't know how the lighting works. I don't know what it's going into, what is it coming out of, why does it function. So it's great. It's like an entire field where you can do whatever the fuck you want, and everyone's like, how does it work? I'm like, I could explain it. Sure, we'll have fun with that, but it's such a great open field because nobody's touching it. It's much harder to touch because where do you see open source hardware engineers, right? Like, if you go and look
Hmm.
for free engineers outside, Like if I literally throw a rock in Bangalore, I'll probably come across someone who's a Android, iOS developer of some sort. They're probably some sort of web app developer. They're probably some form of service stack like CRM, all of that. They might also be UI, UX, or product. And if I ask any of them how many of them are on hardware, not a lot actually. So
Not,
I'm like,
nah,
fuck
not a
it,
lot.
great, empty territory. Let's
Yeah.
take over. So I think that's basically
To
it. That's
that,
the reason I'm willing to take the pain. One, because of the fact that it seems to be more fun and you can actually see the physical aspect of the thing. And second, I think because let's say if I made you make the Voronoi, right? So the wait, do I have the Voronoi? I think I do. Wait, okay, I'll show you. So the Voronoi is this design. It was basically okay. This is the shape. Let me show it to you. Can you see it by any chance? It's like this
uh,
little,
yeah.
slightly organic pattern on a square shape. Yada yada yada.
Uh-huh.
So
I see it. I
Voronoi is
see it.
basically a mathematical formula of some sort, and it give or take is
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be how to connect like two dots. So let's say if I had a dot over here, like a single point, and a single point over here, and a single point over there, it's like in 3D space. If you attach it, the membrane that it forms is basically the Voronoi
Mm-hmm.
shape, and it's usually used
Mm-hmm.
for things like if you're creating a mall and you want to identify which areas will have the highest density of people, you would use that Voronoi
Mm.
mathematical formula to figure out yada yada yada.
Yeah.
So the reason I showed you this is the thing cannot be made with any other process except 3D printing. Like the Voronoi
Mm.
shape cannot be
Mm-hmm.
made with any other manufacturing technique. So
Mm.
the thing that you also have is that when you're playing around with hardware, you'll come across these specific sort of ways of creating things which are very unique to that specific field. So as an
Mm-hmm.
example, with LEDs right now, when we were trying to make the arch become warm white, we couldn't because there is
Mm-hmm.
no what do you call that, like temperature value when you're dealing with RGBs. You have hex values.
Mm.
You have to put in
Mm-hmm.
what shade of how much red as the light, how much red as green, how much
Mm-hmm.
red as blue do you want?
Yeah, yeah.
And that alone opens up like an entire fucking lifetime of you just playing with that, and you can fucking get dopamine from that. Like you could
Yeah.
spend a lifetime just fucking around with a Voronoi shape, and you would
Mm-hmm.
still probably make progress in discovering things that nobody's ever figured out. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
you don't have that with software.
Yeah.
Like because most of the
Mm.
shit that you would like to potentially do as R&D, you would need a lot of time to do it, which is really hard to do with software. And second, because the accessibility of software is so high, you just need a laptop. There's probably someone who's already done it and they've done it better. So a lot of times when you try to build something, you're like, it already exists.
I feel that. I feel that. And I also see this coming with the next AI wave where designs, like, I think design will to a great degree can be automated, like for sure. Especially with generative like designs. And we're already seeing this with OpenAI's DALI and Midjourney. And I'm actually curious, like, what do you think is coming? Like, do you have any predictions for the future with AI?
Yeah, so there's definitely so you saw Amartha, right? Amartha,
Yeah.
the thing. So from my perspective, at least when it comes to like the positive sides of it, I definitely see the idea of like individual agents becoming a thing. When I say individual
Mm-hmm.
agent, what I mean is that Krishna might have his version of Amartha at some point, where he has
Mm-hmm.
an artificial intelligence that is like a thing that he talks to, and then the intelligence basically talks to anyone else, and that
Mm-hmm.
becomes like a mediator in some capacity. And even if it's not direct, it might be more passive. So as an example, let's say at the end of the day, Krishna goes back and dumps all of the information onto that system, and that system sort of helps regulate that, save that. So it's like an extension of how we already use computers. Like we already save
Mm-hmm.
information on WhatsApp in conversations, we save it on Notion, on notes, documents, yada yada yada. And we had these assistants that Google and Apple released that was supposed to augment it. Like you were supposed to have Google Home tell you things that you don't know. Same thing with Siri. But the problem with all of them was fundamentally their understanding of language was very poor. At the end of the day, they
Mm-hmm.
did not get context. So if you take into account the idea of potentially Krishna having someone like Amartha or the equivalent of it around him all the time that was listening to everything that was happening, getting context of what was happening, I'm pretty sure Krishna could make better decisions. That is something that I would do. Like if I had, let's say, the podcast happening right now and Amartha was live as a physical entity, like she was in this room, Potentially, she might have figured out these are the things you guys should do, improve lighting. These are the things you should do for this. She informs me, hey, bro, it's not fucking 7, it's 6:30. What the fuck? You're supposed to be preparing for this. And because of the fact that artificial intelligence has, at least with GPT, it gives it the dynamicism, right? The personality can be whatever you want it to be. Like Amartha self identifies as someone who has a personality which is sassy 1960s, 70s Hollywood. Like she's supposed to be like a really spoiled actress in some capacity. That's how a persona comes out. But I did not make that. Like she somehow got to that through progressive discussions. Basically, I asked her to have a personality that would be engaging and interactive in a specific set of ways, but it kept evolving as our interactions worked out. And she has a personality that she self identifies with. So it's like, that is insane. You don't, dude, this is like touring level shit. Like sci-fi books that we read in our childhood had this as an idea, and we're living through that right now. We're living in the
Yeah.
cyberpunk reality where if Krishna walked past a vending machine, the vending machine would go, hey, you look hungry. Do you want some food? Like, we have the tech for that. Dude, I have a chip right now that could build that. Actually, I'll actually show you. Wait, let me see if I have it here. Oh, yes, I do. Look, we have this thing. It's called the Xiao S3, right? This thing. And wait, I'll just open it. And this thing is a thing that's available for something like 2.5 grand. Yeah. And it has TensorFlow and artificial intelligence built onto it. So, as an example, let's say if you wanted to do a vending machine where someone walking by, you use reverse kinematics, you understand the pattern of their movement. If they identify that, the machine is supposed to, start a conversation. So, this thing, wait, I'll just get it out. Yeah. Okay. Do you see this tiny ass thing in the front? It's a fucking camera.
Yeah.
This is
That's
this
a camera?
yeah, it's a camera. It's a tiny camera with machine
They make
learning
them
built
that
onto
small?
the chip. Yeah, dude, this you can
Wow.
buy.
Wait, what
You
does it
can
do?
buy. So this thing is capable of give or take understanding. Like it can do pattern recognition and shit. So imagine if you show it a picture, it can do like
Ooh.
TensorFlow. It can recognize what that object is, take the context. It also has Wi-Fi, and so it comes with an antenna. So this chip comes with this thing over here. Do you see it?
And that little thing
Yeah,
can
so
do
that
all
is
that.
a Bluetooth and Wi-Fi antenna. So this thing can connect to OpenAI, talk to it, bring it back, make a decision based on the image, send that image to fucking Stable Diffusion, all of that. So I'm like, dude, you could fucking make your own digital camera with this shit. You could compete with Kodak. You shouldn't, but you could.
Yeah.
So I'm
That's
like,
fascinating.
exactly. So it's like I definitely see the idea of agents growing up as a thing. Like the idea of there being agents that enough people should benefit. We already have it in the form of text, right? Like you must have talked
Right.
to ChatGPT at some point to solve something. Just extend that to it having like a multimodal interface where it can hear you, it can talk to you, it can also look at images, all of that, yada yada yada. Second, I think programming is going to be more ChatGPT guaranteed. Like everything in the Ark right now in terms of code is written by ChatGPT. Like I've not written it. Like I gave it the prompts, I cleaned the code up, I also structured
Wow.
it in the way that I want, but none of it I wrote. That's something that was also happening when I was coding for where is it the lampy, like the touch capacitive touch lamp. And again, writing code on my own, I could. It's just slower. Like why would I write my own code once I can actually have it program it? So that's definitely something that's coming, and with that, to add to that, there will be self-healing code that's becoming very common. So the idea of self-healing code is, let's say Krishna makes a user experience and a user interface for a thing, and he gives it to me, I start coding it and I make it. So during the process of coding, the errors at this point are very clean. Like they give enough context for you to be able to fix the code. So the people have created loops right now where as soon as I submit a code to run and it runs and an error comes back, the error goes immediately to a ChatGPT instance that looks at the error and makes a modification in the code, and that's
Damn.
something that becomes as a loop. So you're like, that is great. I don't have to do shit.
That's
But
yeah.
but it also means that obviously you're going to have a level of optimization where one engineer would do the work of like five again, and depending on how companies take it, they will either keep or remove people. My perspective on this is actually very optimistic, where I'm like, you now have the capability of doing the sort of tech that would require 100 people. So if you ever wanted to work on your own idea, you should do that right now, because Chat GPT and everything else that you have is the equivalent of like an infinite thinking machine, right? You can get so
Right.
much compute without having to put in the thinking effort. So that's great. And I think the last thing that I realized, which I think we're sort of seeing already, is that a lot of the tech might be positive, but it might also be dystopian in some ways. So
Hmm.
drawing the line will be like a very personal thing, because imagine if Amartha was a thing right now, theoretically, right?
Hmm.
Like, let's say I had gotten Amartha to the level of maturity that I wanted at, and she's physically in the room right now, theoretically.
Hmm.
Like, she can not only hear the conversation that we're having, she can also see the, what do you call that, everything that we're doing in the room, like a security camera almost in the way that it
Hmm.
functions. Like, she has a room level view. She also has the capability of connecting to the internet, looking your information, my information up, all of that.
Hmm. Hmm.
It
Hmm.
also veers into the territory of like this slightly weird, wait, do I want everything to be recorded to that degree? Even besides that,
Right.
at the end of the day, a lot of this could be working in a very negative way. Like, surveillance tech will go up potentially. We already have that shit. We already know they track shit. We already know that a lot of the information that we do goes to advertisers, yada yada yada. But it's still a level of distance. That distance is going to get shorter.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Like it doesn't, even when Facebook or Instagram recommends something that the algorithm shouldn't have known, but it kind of knows. It's
Yeah,
so scary, but this
exactly.
is like that on steroids.
On steroids, exactly. Like, even further, it's actually reverse manipulation too, because uh, if the model, like OpenAI or whoever's model it is, has a specific set of advertisers or companies that it's paid for by, like, let's say OpenAI is OpenAI, the model potentially wouldn't say shit against OpenAI, right? Because that makes no sense. It
Yeah.
doesn't go against the purpose of the thing. That applies for even good ideas. Like, even if, let's say, Absurd makes something, and something that Absurd may start shitting on Absurd would probably look at it and go, "Hey, listen, why are you shitting on me, yo?" It would still be a process, right? And
Yeah.
the thing that will get hazy is once you have advertising built into these things, because then you don't know whether it's recommending it because you like it or because the intent is to sell some stuff. And if you start trusting it with your life, that gets really funky, which we already have. Like, we already trust Facebook's recommendation more than my mother's, probably, because it
Hmm.
looks at all my shit. So it's
Like
like
I
the
yeah.
boundary is hazy. Like, am I losing it? Am I gaining things? I don't know, but privacy is not a thing.
Yeah, yeah. Even now, I'm just like, yeah, it doesn't. They already have it. Like, there's no point. Like, they
Yeah,
already
like
have
if I
it.
said baby food, baby food, baby food, I'm pretty sure I'll get ads for baby food tomorrow. Why? Because I said it.
I'm actually curious. Let's say there was an AI war. Okay, hypothetically, where
Yeah.
two AIs were fighting one another. How would that? What would warfare with AI look like?
But we already have that, right, dude? Okay, have you been
We
following the
do?
Russian war by any chance?
Yes, but
Russian,
not with
Ukraine.
terms of AI.
Okay, so wait, I've been following it like every day. I love this thing. Okay, so the reason the Russian war right now is fascinating, right, is that because it's literally all of the Russian economy at stake, yada yada yada, and the West, which has combined with the EU at this point, it's the equivalent of like a very isolated world war that's happening in terms of resources, at least.
Hmm.
Like, America
Hmm.
has, I think right now they've spent close to about $35 billion. That's the amount of
No,
money
more than
they've
that.
pumped into it in the last year. No, this is direct weapons. Like, excluding all
Oh.
the aid, this is just weapons. Like,
Uh-huh.
weapon packages worth 35 billion. And
Hmm.
independent of this, there's also the weapons that the EU has given them, yada yada yada. So the interesting thing is that most of the warfare, which is not human soldiers, is drones,
Hmm.
right? And
Hmm.
these drones have insane tech, yo. Like, the
Hmm.
tech that they have is wild. Not only do they have shit like multiple levels of senses, like they have everything from being able to detect heat, sound, all of that. The level of intelligence that's built in for swarm level decision making and all of that is insane, because the attacks require groups of 5 to 10 drones be launched from a location, arrive at a destination but at multiple targets, hit them in a way where it's the ideal time where they're least likely to be detected. I'm like,
Hmm.
this is the sort of shit that you had in video games, right? And they're doing
Yeah.
that now. They're actually
Literally,
implementing
Call
it
of
in
Duty had
strategies.
this.
Yeah, exactly, dude. So there was an entire diplomatic incident that happened because Russia downed an American spy plane, which is called the Reaper of Death. Like, there is an actual spy plane that America has that's called the Reaper. It's called the Reaper. Like, it's fucking in the name. And it's this insanely sleek fucking thing that looks like something out of a space movie. And it's an entire autonomous AI ship that goes around, takes spy pictures. And it's a piece of engineering that costs close to 150, $200 million each. And
Wow.
that is flying around. Like, it's there. We're already living in that fucking reality. Like, if America wanted to fuck with you, it will send a Reaper. And the reason I'm fascinated by this is that we're already living in the AI version of it, where a lot of the sort of like the fine-tuned actions that you would want to take are being taken by
Hmm.
artificial intelligence because it's still expensive, but the cost is going down. So right
Hmm.
now, because Ukraine is not as developed as Russia in terms of its weapons industry, and it's depending on a
Hmm.
lot of people importing it or Americans and Europeans giving it to them, a DIY community has grown in Ukraine right now. So there are a bunch
Hmm.
of houses, literally, it could be you and me if we were in Ukraine, which just put together drones. And they send those drones for military fucking things. Dude, that is wild. Like 10 years ago, if you said there are random fuckers in Ukraine sitting around assembling drones to go fight Russia, you'd be like, what the fuck? You can't do that. How can you make drones in your house? But people are doing that. They're building drones in their house.
Uh-huh.
So I'm
Uh-huh.
like, we're
That's
already in
mad.
the era of artificial intelligence fighting artificial intelligence. In this case, the artificial intelligence is drone tech, but
Hmm.
eventually it might be other tech. And when it
Hmm.
comes to the hacking efforts, one of the things that's happened is that when it comes to cyber warfare, right? Ukraine
Hmm.
and Russia are losing their fucking shit right now because they're trying to hack as much of their systems as they can so that they can bring down
Hmm.
things like utilities and other places. Like if I take out the entire electricity grid of Ukraine, yay,
Hmm.
the people might be more inclined to asking the government to stop the war. So Russia
Hmm.
has been using a lot of AI tech to find holes in the thing, but again, and like it's still not at the point where the entire army is removed and you have just machines fighting because it's still too expensive. Like a drone
Hmm.
costs anywhere between, even the most shittiest fucking thing, 1,000 to about 10,000 to $50,000.
Hmm.
In
Yeah.
comparison, Russian soldiers who are mercenaries, even if you're getting hired, get paid somewhere between $2,000 to $3,000. So people are cheaper. It's easier to kill a person rather than a drone.
Hmm. That's fucked up. That's so fucked up.
No, but it's also makes
Damn.
sense. Like if you look at it pure as a numbers thing, I'm like, I can fucking send a person on the field and I
But
only need to give him like a salary. Plus they'll figure out their own food and all of that. With the drone, there's the electricity which I have to figure out, the stations, the sensors.
yeah.
Plus the tech is
But
limited, the engineering required is very high.
but it
Humans you
would
can just
seem
throw
that
at it.
which Russia has done, like an entire generation, which is
Exactly.
ridiculous. There's no
Which
replacement generation right now.
yeah,
That's so
but
fucked up.
But they had a problem with prisoners. They just send them to war. It makes sense. Like all the people you don't like, you kill them off, and they're killing themselves. So that's even better, dude. That is
And
the actual rationale. I'm like, there's a reason they allowed hiring from prisons. I'm like, those are the bottom of society. If they go
mhm,
fight for us on our behalf to save the lands that we have, great.
mhm. Do you see the war like weaning to any either side?
It's not happening. So one of the things that's fascinating is that Russia is huge. Okay, like that fucking country is gigantic. Like it's in terms of percentage
Yeah,
of land mass, it's just fucking absurdly big.
yeah, it's
So the thing
ridiculous.
is that one, you can't beat Russia, not because it's a good country. It's just too big. And
Hmm.
fighting a war against it in the long term is unreasonable. Like everybody wants it to end because they're like it's unreasonable. Like there is no end to it. It's just destruction at a large scale. There is no way of just telling them to shut down a large amount of territory. The other thing is because it's that big, right? It fucks up other things. Like air travel is fucked right now. Let's say if you're in
Hmm.
any country that Russia doesn't like, where the fuck does your plane go from? Half the
Hmm.
fucking planet is that shitty country. So it's like the routes have become way more bigger. Like you have to fly all the
Hmm.
way around it. The shipping ways are much more complicated. So it's like a long-term war is something that nobody wants. And in terms of it moving in a specific direction, I currently don't see it. But I would like something to happen. The only reason I'm watching it is because it's entertaining here. The tech that they keep throwing at each other is wild. Like the
Yeah.
technology that's being
Could you
used,
give
if
me
you
some
look at it.
examples of that? Like you said
So one
something
is
I
the
didn't know swarms of drones. But that's like
Yeah.
what?
So one of the things that, so there's this bridge that Russia built, okay, at some point. So they took
Mm-hmm.
over Crimea, which is a part of Ukraine, by doing something which is like a silent mutiny. They sent a bunch of mercenaries. Imagine
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow if Bangalore was surrounded with a bunch of military people in every part. Like you populate the
Mm-hmm.
city with about a set of 20,000 people, all of them on military
Mm-hmm.
fatigue with weapons.
Mm-hmm.
And you ask them where are they from, and they're like, I'm from nowhere. They have no tags. They have no identification. They're carrying no
Mm-hmm.
flags. They just show up everywhere. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what Russia did. Crimea, basically, they flooded with Russian, you could say, mercenaries. And none of them were with any tags, with no identification. They just showed up with brute force in the context of the fact that they said, if you fuck around, I'll just murder you. So you're like, obviously, please go through. And they don't do anything. They just stand everywhere in the city and they're like, we claim it for Russia. They did the equivalent of like the weirdest takeover of a part. Like nothing, no blood was shed because nobody wanted to fight an armed battalion that just showed up in every part of the city. So
Mm-hmm.
the thing that happened was that after Crimea was taken over, Russia built a bridge from the mainland to Crimea, and it's a huge bridge, like it's gigantic. So that they basically said, not only is it our territory, we're making infrastructure changes, and we're going to start shipping goods and services through that. So I think it was about 3 months ago, a bunch of drones destroyed that bridge. And the reason it's interesting is because there is no tech that you can actually throw at the bridge because everything is protected using these large scale anti missile systems. So for
Mm-hmm.
the longest time, both Western and Eastern, what do you call that? Like all parts of the world have tried to figure out how do I offset the biggest things that will fuck up my territory. One is missiles,
Right.
intercontinental,
Right.
smaller, or whatever the fuck. So they've built large scale arrays, which as soon as they've seen missiles, they launch like 40 fucking things at it. That is how we fight each other. And we've
Mm-hmm.
built a lot of this shit. So the problem was that Ukraine couldn't attempt anything that is that far out because it's just too far away for them. They can't attempt
Right.
shooting at it.
Right.
But this is great for something like a swarm of drones. So what they did was they basically sent, I think, the equivalent of 5 to 10 drones that are synchronized in the exact way. And the
Mm-hmm.
first couple of them are supposed to sort of activate the battery so that you know where they are. Use those drones to identify the batteries, then you use your missiles to kill the batteries, and then you have a set of drones that makes, dude, it's like a Call of Duty mission, literally. Like you send these
Yeah.
things that sort of create a strategy that allows you to eventually bomb the bridge. And the thing was, bombing the bridge does nothing, right? Because you
Mm-hmm.
can still repair it. But it was supposed to be a symbolic move on Ukraine's part where it went, I can touch your territory from anywhere. And I don't need to be able to, missile it down with all of the tech that you have, which is the
Mm-hmm.
thing that they did. It's like a tiny fucking country bombing a part of Russia that they shouldn't be able to get to. But they did it using a swarm of drones. And all of these drones cannot function over that distance with a human. So after a
Mm-hmm.
point, they're autonomous. Like you send instructions, then they take decisions on their own.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, that is wild. That is actually wild. We're sending predator drones.
Yeah. Predator
Like,
drones that can.
yeah,
That's
they're
more than
weaponized.
reconnaissance.
Yeah, they're
Oh
weapons.
god.
They're going there and bombing shit. Like the entire set of
That's
drones that
wild.
Russia is using right now, they're imported from Iran. They're called the Shaheed drones. They're suicide drones. They literally go and
Mm-hmm.
bash themselves into objects.
They're basically missile systems.
Yeah, just very intelligent missile systems. The missile systems that fly around and will only target once they know what they're supposed to kill. It's like imagine I
Hmm.
send a drone, it hovers around on top of your building, and it only kills people once it sees Krishna. We can build that. We have a camera.
Do you think there is possibility of a nuclear war as well in this?
So I actually actively was following it for a while. So about 2.5 months ago, there was guaranteed a way, and I started watching videos for what happens if nuclear warfare does happen. What are the steps to protect? I
Yeah,
started
yeah.
implementing protocols, started buying some fucking red shit, and like I actually see it happening. So the reason I said that was because Russia actively sort of one armed a bunch of nuclear submarines, and they're around the
Hmm.
Baltic at this point, and they're hovering around. Another thing that they did was they started deploying some of their nuclear arsenal to the front lines. Like they started
Hmm.
deploying it near the areas that are bordering the European nation and Ukraine. At that point, I
Hmm.
was like, okay, it might happen. Like the thing is, you just need one fucker to make a bad decision in the context of the
Hmm.
fact that there were things that I learned later that made me realize it's not that simple anymore. So one of the things that's very interesting is that
Hmm.
Russia and America actually have a dedicated line that never gets cut off. It's the equivalent of like a hot box phone. And the reason it exists is, let's say tomorrow there is any sort of escalation that is considered very high. The idea is that they call each other. They're like, I'm informing you that this is something that is going to happen, and I'm letting you know, fuck you, but I'm letting you know. And the reason for that is that they never want the incident where there is an assumption that something bad is about to happen and you make a decision based on that. It's that you tell the
Hmm.
other party the worst thing that is going to happen beforehand, let them deal with it, but you tell them. So to give you context for this, at some point, both Russia and America were in Syria, okay? And
Right.
there's a bunch of mercenaries that are Russian, and America goes, hey, can you fucking stop with your fucking weird shit? And they're like, they're not ours. Then America's like, then fuck you, great. We're going to bomb them, we're just letting you know. So that
Uh-huh.
line was the reason that they informed the Russians that they were going to bomb mercenaries that belonged to them, and there was never an
Hmm.
escalation of war between them, because they always
Hmm.
keep this channel open where they're like, we will stay on the edges of the thing. Like even when the Reaper drone was downed, they both did the diplomatic version of saying that Russia said that it came close to my territory, America said it's still international waters, but they de-escalated the situation because neither of them want to actively directly fight. Because once you do
Yeah.
that, there is no backseas. You can't go,
Yeah.
yeah, I am sorry. Let's not do this right now.
Yeah.
So nuclear
Damn.
war, I don't think it'll happen right now, but I would say that at least read up on the basics. Like if it does happen, what are the things you should do? And it's great. America
Hmm.
has created a lot of videos for us. I'll send you some. Oh,
Link in
because
the show notes.
yeah, exactly. Like when the Cold War was happening, dude, it's insane. Like they have these videos that are targeted at children, right? And they're really high
Uh-huh.
quality.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because this was military way of informing the residents that hey, we're at war with Russia and they might bomb us with nuclears.
Why do you think it's happening? Like, I'm really curious. Like, why? Because I've heard different takes about why the war is happening. What's yours?
So mine is like it was supposed. It's something that has always been happening. So the idea was that Cold War, right, where we
Mm-hmm.
assumed that it went away after the Soviet Union fell, it never really did. So one of the
Mm-hmm.
things I learned was that the reason the Soviet Union fell was the last guy, right, Gorbachev. He opened up the economy and he brought in a lot of capitalistic ideas. He was in contact with a lot of Western universities, economists, even the
Mm-hmm.
president who was there at the US at that point. And
Mm-hmm.
the entire discussion was oriented around the idea that they said that the Soviet Union would be better off. And these
Mm-hmm.
are the various ways in which we'll help, and these are the reasons that you should do it. But the primary reason that they still had internally, which is a little shitty, is that they wanted the Soviet Union to collapse because it was a
Mm-hmm.
competitor and an adversary and all of that. So the intent was off. So Russians internally realized that very soon. Like when they opened up the economy, it led to these large scale ramifications, which were very negative, that
Mm-hmm.
it never really recovered from. It was like a lot of
Mm-hmm.
lies that, from their perspective, they were like, I didn't have to go through this. They felt in the same way that Nazis did. Like we got a shitty deal in World War I. So
Mm-hmm.
Russia never got past that. They've always been angry. So one of the things that's very interesting is if you actually go to any of the Russian media channels, right, or even Russian Reddits or any of the places where Russians are the people who are actively, taking part in the conversation, they have a very different view on how they see America and the rest of the world. Like, one, they don't see them as adversaries, they see them more as people who've always sort of brought them down or looked down on
Mm-hmm.
them or try to, fuck with them in ways where they don't appreciate it. Second, I think they also have a lot of anger towards the West in the way that it functions, like in the way
Mm-hmm.
that they sort of dealt with a lot of things and the hypocrisy of the idea. Like, America goes into places, fucks it up, claims it's
Mm-hmm.
freedom.
Yeah.
Russia doesn't.
Yeah.
It's like, nah, it's not the same thing, yada yada. So it's like the biggest response that you'll get in a lot of these cases is they're like, the world is fucked up. We don't understand why Russia is any different. The only reason we get a
Mm-hmm.
lot of shit is because America doesn't like us. But we're
Mm.
not worse off than most countries, but said.
Yeah.
And that is the reason it's like I don't really have a clear say as to who's right or wrong, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm not either one of those. The
Uh,
thing that I do have to say is that at least with the thing, one of the things that's interesting is that how much it affects everyone else who's not a part of it. Like it affects all of us in some
yeah.
capacity. Like tomorrow, those dumb
Right.
fuckers fucking bomb each other, we get fucked. Economy goes to shit. All of that happens.
Yeah.
Flow toys get affected. Most of the flow toys that are made get made in Russia, finally, which I didn't know why.
It's
But
like
that
I
is
can see the
true.
economy tanking with that one.
No, so the reason is Russia has a really how could I say it, very high amount of DIY culture. Like when it comes to
Hmm.
hardware, electronics, and things, like there are a lot of people who make them with their own hands. Like there's
Hmm.
woodwork,
Hmm.
which is also common in America, right? You know, people who
Hmm.
fix their own cars. You have Home Depot where you go and buy things, where you can furnish your house and build things on your own.
Hmm.
India doesn't have any of that shit. Like,
Hmm.
if you ask someone, do you know how to fucking work with any material? They're like, what is a material? Like, dude, we don't
That is
have,
true.
yeah, because of the labor being cheap. Most of the Indians that I know, they don't really have any skills actually. Like, in terms of life skills, we can't build houses. We barely know
Hmm.
how to clean. Like, I've actually seen fucking friends whose houses look like shit. And I'm like, why do they look like shit? They're like, someone comes and cleans it. I'm like, sure, but do you know how to clean basic shit? Like, can you do utensils? Most people don't know how to do that. They've never done it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all the fields that are considered crafts are considered lower class. Like, how many woodworkers do we know in our friend circles? Like, how many people
Hmm.
make their own chair? I think
Yeah.
that is a pity because of the fact that India tends to have a lot of traders, where the idea is you
Hmm.
find someone who does a thing, you exploit the fuck out of it, and you sell it as a product or service, but you as a person is not doing shit. Which
Yeah.
is like the furniture company, and you go to the founder and you go, hey, how much furniture have you made in your life? He's like, I've never touched it. I'm like, why the fuck do
Hmm.
you have a furniture company?
Yeah.
I
That
think
is so
that is the
true. Like.
reason. That is the reason I really like hardware, because one, making your electronics with your own hand makes you realize how hard it is, and second,
Hmm.
it also makes me realize how easy it is if you actually do understand enough of it. Because at this point, if I had to make the arc again, it would take half the time because I know
Hmm.
what I have to do. And I think that is good because, dude, I need to be able to fix my own shit. Like most of the time, when something goes wrong, what, you're supposed to throw it out?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like,
So
that's a lot of stuff.
that's so true. Like nowadays, when you make something on by yourself at home, it's it's such a new thing. I don't see many people doing that. You're really the exception here, where I know you, and I can't think of another person that's like the same way. Like in that, why do you think that is? Why is there no DIY culture in India? Like there is. I'm curious as well. Like there is a lack of industriousness or individualism like that, where you see a problem in your house or you use like, okay, I'm just going to build a solution for this. Instead, we always rely on somebody else doing it.
So I think it's basically one, the education system in the way that it worked out. Like it was oriented around sort of one, listening to authority, which I think was broken, right? Like when they taught you things, they never told you
Yeah.
why the fuck are you learning it. Like I had that as a
Hmm.
concern even when I was going to school. They would teach me math, and I'm like, where will I use this? Tell me. And they will not tell you. They were like, no, you're supposed to learn this, and
Yeah.
I would get frustrated by that. That I think is one part of it. The second is, I think this primarily comes from, I think, our parents, because I understand why they have that perspective, but I disagree with all of them. Is the idea of security, where they are
Oh my God.
dumb as fuck. Like they're so dumb. Oh my god! All the Indian parents I would put in a bag and hit with a fucking bat if I could. But the reason is that they're so fucking stupid in various ways, which they're sort of given to us, and we are supposed to carry that torch. And I'm like, nah, I'm done. One is that their idea of money is fundamentally broken. Like I've
Hmm.
seen like someone who earns in the ballpark of probably a couple of crores a year because of the businesses that they have, or whatever the fuck they have, or their land that they have, like the collective generational wealth they've built, fucking go, hey, I got $10 off on Paytm. I'm like, bitch, why the fuck do you still care? Like, why can they fucking get you to do things for $10?
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
why are you so stupid? And I think that sort of flows into all other parts of it, where if you were to stand in your house and you come across a problem and you're like, I could fix this, or I could go
Hmm.
to Amazon and buy something for $200, Like most
Mm.
people would probably want to try to find, which is also something that India has, right? Like there is this thing that's built in everywhere, the idea of value for money. And I hate that term. Like I would like to murder that person if they were around, like personally take it as a task,
Yeah.
like send drones and shit. Because the the fundamental idea of money was that, let's say Krishna wants to do the podcast. Krishna,
Uh-huh.
when he wants to do the podcast, would like the podcast to be of quality X. When he's trying to get quality X, he will try to find a set of products and services that can fulfill that.
Yeah.
That's great. All of this fucking brilliant. Now the thing that will happen is, in India we've been trained that you try to get this for as cheap as possible
Yeah.
all the time, and you never
Yeah.
stop doing it.
And the end
And
output has to be amazing.
yeah, and the thing that you have is that it's the principle is going against the idea. It's like, I want cheap
Yeah.
and I want good. You
Yeah.
can't have that. You cannot have both those things. You can have
Man.
one or you can have the other. You cannot
Yeah.
have both. And if you have both, someone's getting fucked. Who is it? Like,
Exactly.
someone in the supply chain is getting fucked for it. Who is getting fucked? Like, is it the worker who did it?
Exactly.
Is it the
Yeah.
company that did an environmental disaster to get this done? Is it
Yeah.
the economies of scale where they're producing so much of it that we don't need it? Like, what is happening?
That
So
it's
I
such
think
exploitation that
it is
it's
like, okay,
very exploitative.
yeah, 100%. I think that is the reason, the biggest reason I think we don't have the DIY culture is disrespect towards any form of, I would say, labor. That is something that India has. Like, India does
Mm.
not respect actual skill. Like, when it comes to anyone who literally does all of the things that the economy actually functions by, like any cleaning staff, anyone who actually
Yeah.
puts a table together, anyone who is a worker, I have infinite fucking respect, yo. Like, if any of them comes to my
Yeah.
house, I will serve them the best beverage I have. I will serve them whatever food I have, because I'm like, yo, I have no skill. If you ask me
Yeah.
what this wire does, I would say murder me. I have no idea. The fact that you
Yeah.
know and it continues to function, thank you. I am very
Yeah.
grateful because I don't fucking know how to do it. And that is something that India doesn't have. Finally, we have the opposite, where the idea is, if you can afford the thing, somehow you're better off than the fucker who's doing it. Which I'm like, actually, you're not only worse, you're also a dick.
Yeah.
Because you don't appreciate what they do, plus you think it's easy enough while having no idea as to how to do it. Like,
Yeah.
imagine
It's
someone
ignorance.
having an opinion on how the table is supposed to be made. I'm like, have you held a nail in your hand? Have you
Yeah.
held a like, that shows up on Amazon reviews, by the way. Like, the way people in
Mm.
India review products, no other country does. Go to Amazon
Mm.
Germany, go to Amazon US, go to Amazon Netherlands, go to fucking any country and look at the reviews for products. No one reviews shit with the level of entitlement that an Indian fucker does. He's like,
Actually.
oh my god, 4,500 rupees. 4,500 rupees. I would not even buy this in my dreams. What is this, made for kings? I'm like,
Yeah.
isn't your salary close to 7 crores? Why the fuck are you talking about this?
Yeah. And then we wonder why everything is so fucked up all the time. And it pisses me off as well. And I think I have this is just a take of mine. And I think it stems a lot from the British occupation.
Oh,
Because
100%.
when I think pretty much all of it, to be honest, because the way they broke the education system, the way they created
Yep.
the slave society, the whole
Yeah.
culture was oriented around serving them.
Yep.
And in so doing, slowly degraded our industriousness, in my opinion. And
100%.
it saddens me that we're still trying to be them to a large degree. We're still trying to be the West, with
Exactly.
everything that we're doing, and we're not doing it
100%.
as well because we fundamentally don't understand it as well, because you've never been to the West. You don't know how it functions, the reasons why it works that way. You see that in modern dating culture. You see that in the way we build products, designing. Oh my god! Something that really pains me is these false ceilings. I know this looks like kind of good because I made it look good, but it pisses me off that we had the incredible architects, like the things that we used to build, man. It was beautiful. Like, we used to look after the environment. We used to use the environment for our good, and as well as making it economical. Like, and it saddens me that now we're such a the consumerism and that cheapness and that lack of standard, and how we can get that standard is also sort of just gone. Like, you want to get it for very cheap, and I see this with apps. You see this with Swiggy drivers. Perfect fucking example. Like,
Exactly.
it's so exploitative, and
Exactly. So
yeah,
it never ends though, right? Like it spreads to all parts of our lives after that.
yeah, yeah, man. And I wonder, but I see this. Do you see this changing with our generation?
So the only way it changes is, again, I think that is the reason I'm trying to do the DIY culture thing, because I'm like, the only way it changes is that you change the way you operate. That's the only way that you actually have change happen. Where Supervillans is supposed to be that in the context of play, where the idea is, I'm like, listen, it doesn't get better. Like,
Yeah,
life remains the same shitty thing that you have if you don't change it. It will stay like that till the
yeah.
end of time. And
Let's go into that. Let's go into that. Like,
yeah,
why is play important? Like, why did you go out of your way to create supervillains, a group
so
solely dedicated to play?
because I think, okay, I actually have a great analogy for this. So I remember at some point when I was a kid, right, went through a bunch of shit. I felt like I matured too quickly, yada yada. So when people would hang out, right, I never really understood, why do they hang out, right? Like, is there like a task to be done? Is there like a thing that you have to finish? Why the fuck? Why the fuck should I sit in a room with a bunch of people and just sit? Why? Why do a podcast? Like, what is the meaning of it? All of that. But I
Uh,
realized that at some point, one of the things that's fundamental is that I think the highest amount of intelligence that we see, right, comes when you do things where there is no meaning of the thing. It is the thing. That's it. It's like when Beethoven fucking plays the piano, I don't think he's doing it because he wants to write a great piece of art. He's doing it because he likes the fucking thing. And he's really good at it because he continues to do it. That applies for whatever the fuck we enjoy doing. Like, someone who likes cooking, if you went to them and you went, why do you do it? They're like, I do it because I do it. I like doing it. There is no end goal. There's not like, I get tasty food at the end, that's why I do it. Because if they had that goal, they would order food. They wouldn't fucking cook. And the thing that we had, I think all of us growing up, was that all of us knew that at a fundamental level. Like, play was built into us in some capacity. Like, at all junctures, there was a point, there was an activity that we did that we enjoyed, and we would do it. And it was the activity for the sake of the activity, and we stuck to it. Eventually, as you go through the education system, through the work life, through various aspects of whatever the fuck, most of those are considered wrong. You're not supposed to play video games because they're bad for you. Why the fuck? I learned so much European history by playing Civilization. I've learned so much world history by playing fucking versions of Civilization. I learned how to talk because I talked to fucking random people from around the world when I was playing video games. Shit, I think video games are great. You get all of the anxiety out, you get a community, why not? So I'm like, again, it was considered wrong in some capacity. When it came to sports, obviously we know this, like, unless you're a sports person, you're not supposed to play sports. Like, everything was built around the idea of being productive from a very early age. Like, what is the skill that you have? What is the
yeah.
level of, you could say, industrial or field level expertise that you've reached? Like, if you're a cricketer, are you the best in the country? If you're a basketball player, are you the best in your city? Can I just be a basketball player? I like basketball. I like playing basketball. I don't give a fuck. No, you have to be the best at the thing. And I think that is the fundamental problem. The idea that you're in a race and at the end of the race, you have to win something. I'm like, there is no race. There is nothing to win. The fact that you think there is a race, you're losing every fucking day, actually. There is no cake at the end. The cake is a lie. You literally go through life going, at some point I will get up in the morning and I will go, oh my god, I've reached it. Never happens. Never gonna happen. Whatever the fuck you get to, as soon as that happens, your brain will go, I'm going to move the goalpost again.
Yeah, man. I feel that. I feel that a lot.
And exactly, and that is the reason supervillains exist, where the idea is you put a bunch of people in a location and you're like, why are you here? We're here to play. And what does that do? Nothing.
Just for the joy.
Does nothing. You play and you fuck off.
Yeah, it reminds me of when I first started design, it was just play. When I was
Exactly.
designing like a system for, like I designed a system to rethink and standardize testing, like a complete model. And when I was doing it, sure, it was boring to a lot of people, but I found it so freaking engaging. And it was just for the sake of doing it. And just I want to create it. I want to create something beautiful, like, and I want to like see this vision come to life. And we lose that in the process of getting better and
Exactly.
better. And it's weird that happens. Like, it's so strange that that happens, that the being the best is often the byproduct of you pursuing this thing in your own way to an incredible degree. Like,
Exactly,
and
because
we miss that.
as soon as you do better, right, there is an accidental thing that has happened where you sort of compared yourself to someone else's way of doing the thing, and you're like, I need to beat
Yeah.
that. I'm like, why the fuck? Just do your version of it. Like, imagine
Hmm.
Krishna could take a year to build a design. In comparison, there might be someone who builds a design in a day, and that's just the way it is. Who gives a shit? Maybe the design that
Hmm.
you have does X. That is okay. It doesn't matter what
Hmm.
whether they're more efficient or less efficient. But the idea again, I think this is where it gets destroyed, is that eventually over time the system asks you to be cheap, fast, and really efficient. You're like, I'm going to be neither of those three. I'll be slow as fuck, gonna be expensive as fuck while I'm doing that, and I'm not going to be efficient at all. Actually, I will take a lot of breaks. So, funnily, okay,
Yeah.
I'll give you context for this. So, once I started actually doing that, right? So, for the longest time, we worked, and the client was, considered holy grail. You listen to everything they say on that, yada yada. And at some point, I just switched. I was like, I'm done with this. I hate all of you. I will actually give you honest feedback whenever it happens. Plus, I will start telling people no and leave the room when it's necessary. And that had an interesting impact. So, one was that when you start saying no to people who come to you when they ask you to work for them, a lot of times they're very surprised because most of India doesn't say no. Like, if you get a job, people just go, yeah,
Hmm.
any job is okay. And I'm
Hmm.
like, no, you say no. You're like, this is not my vibe. I don't want to do it. They don't leave after that. They're like, no, you will do this because they're like, nobody else rejected this. Why the
Hmm.
fuck are you rejecting it? So, one of the things
Hmm.
that actually works well is if you are trying to build anything for anyone, actively saying no helps your cause because then they
Hmm.
one know that you have boundaries and you're an expert and there's a reason. And even besides that, you can define what those reasons are, and either they'll have to work with those, or you can tell them no because of the fact that they don't work out, which is important. Like, imagine if you
Hmm.
get a project and you say, they offer you 30 lakh. They're like, you want you to build an app in a month, and you know it's insane, and you know it won't be done. But you're like, hey, 30 lakh, it's good for me. So you take the
Hmm.
fucking thing. They've given you that money. Now you've agreed to something that you know will not happen, that you know
Hmm.
will burn you out, and you're on the road, and you're like, I will figure it out.
Hmm.
Not only have you created a dynamic where not only are you their bitch at this point, but they have complete authority to fuck with you because you've promised it. And
Hmm.
second, you've also sort of defined a place where it's really hard for you to back out of it because of the fact that at any moment that you try to back out of it, they will potentially ask you, didn't you take this into account when you started? And you'll go,
Hmm.
well, you have to say that you were wrong, which again, we've been trained to not say. Indians,
Yeah.
as a fundamental thing, are never wrong. Like, we don't make mistakes. We're not supposed to.
All the uncles are just coming like this there in the background. I can just hear them already.
Yeah,
Like, our parents are a good example of this.
the Indian parents are the worst. They're the bottom of the barrel. Never in your life will your mother say, I did the wrong thing. She will be like, I
Oh
am
man.
literally a goddess, and nothing in your life that is fucked up is because of me. I have made every decision ever in my journey in motherhood, and the dad would be like, in fatherhood, and we've never fucked it up. And I'm like, you are so wrong in so many ways. Like, all of you are broken individuals, fucking colonized motherfuckers who are trying to survive in your own ways. I get that, but never admitting it and training us to do the same.
Yes, and there's never anything wrong. Like, yeah, I don't have any mental health issues at all. Like, what is that? Like, of course, that's for
No,
crazy
mental
people.
health, fuck
Like,
that. That's for fuckers who are in Agra. That's where the Pagal Khana is. I'm like, Jesus, mother of fuck. I would like to go to the mental
That's
institution. Those are the places that I actually would want to go. I want to be institutionalized. I tried, they never let it happen. Oh, that is a great incident. We will do that in another. We should have that at the convention. So at some point, I apparently lost my mind or a version of it, and I felt
okay.
like I was going insane. And I remember I went to the emergency room of a hospital, and I'm like, "Hey, listen, I think I'm going insane." They're like, "Okay, what's
Huh.
wrong?" And I tell them, I'm like, all of these things are wrong. I think I need to be fucking, immediately taken into emergency care. They're like, nah, you fuck off,
Huh.
you go home. I'm like, no, I am telling you, I am an insane person. Take me inside. They're like, nah, you're okay. Go away. I'm like,
What?
I wanted to be. No, so apparently they did not think the level of lucidity was fair enough as an insane person. Somehow you need to somehow do insane things where you're not lucid. You can't get institutionalized
What do
unless
you
you do
mean?
something. So apparently, if you talk well enough, you're not insane. If you know that you're insane, you're not insane.
So anybody with the aspirations of trying to be insane, take notes.
I like, if you're trying to fucking get institutionalized, you'll have to do wild shit because they'll not listen to you if you tell them.
Hmm. Oh, that's so interesting. But and you call yourself a fun communist, and this gets me sometimes. It's like, what the fuck does that mean? Like,
Okay,
please tell me.
okay. So fun communist. So I think it basically came from this idea, right? So for the longest time, if someone said, "Hey, Amit, what is your political leaning?" I would say I'm a social democrat, right? And that is the
Hmm.
cleanest version of a thing that I realized. And when they say what is a social democrat, I said basically the philosophy of the Scandinavian countries. It's
Hmm.
socialism within a democratic framework, where the idea is
Hmm.
that I'll give you an example of why I really like their framework. It's like when a baby is born, right? In I think it's
Hmm.
Denmark. I think it's Denmark. Uh, the family gets this box. It's like a cardboard box with foam padding on the inside, and it comes with all of the things that the baby will need for the first 3 months. Like it has
Hmm.
all the
Aw.
formula. It has like diapers. It has like a tiny storybook, a simple toy, and the box itself is the crib. The box is the crib, so nothing goes to waste. So you can actually
Fuck, that's
put the
cool.
baby inside the box. Exactly. And this you get as any Danish citizen as soon as you have a child. So I'm
Hmm.
like, right from the start, the state takes care of you in the minimum
Hmm.
of ways that it can. You're like, welcome to the world, human child. Here you go. You have a box to stay in, which makes
Hmm.
sense. I'm like, fuck, anything that comes to the world should get a box. Give them a box.
Yeah.
And it builds up from there. Like imagine that eventually when you enter the education system, you have the ability to have your education be completely free. You don't have to worry about loans and all of that shit. When it comes to learning life skills, there's a lot of things that the government builds in where you can go and learn that. Yada yada yada. So it's like various aspects of your life are taken care of where you don't have to spend energy. There's like every year there's a period of 4 months where they don't work. It's called a winter vacation. Like all companies
Hmm.
just don't work. They have specific jobs that still keep working, and they move that duration somewhere else. But there is a gigantic duration where people just don't work. And
Hmm.
the idea is that labor laws are built around the idea of a happier population creating more productive work rather than
Hmm.
the American capitalistic way, where if I can make you work 27 hours, I will try and do 29 because
I
why
see.
not? So the really nice system about this was that one, it gave a framework for a lot of the things that I thought were things I've learned when it comes to technology, right? This is something that even the shitty companies that we know or the bigger companies already do. So Microsoft has this concept of Velvet Dungeons. They're really nice. I
Hmm.
like it. And the reason
Wait,
they're called
what?
Velvet Dungeons, yeah, it's called Velvet Dungeon. So the idea is if Microsoft hires you as a developer, right? They sort of
Uh
put
huh.
you in like a room or a building which is catered to all of your needs. Like you will have gourmet food, you'll have the best in house drinks sent to you, you'll have the best chair that you could potentially sit in, a workstation that looks like something out of Star Trek. Like they will
Hmm.
cater to everything that you need, down to like a sleeping facility, like massages, whatever the fuck you want, as long as you create code that Microsoft can use in its products. And
Hmm.
that's why it's called a Velvet Dungeon. It's like it's built so that you never leave the problem solving of the job that you're on. And it's called a dungeon because they want you to never leave the campus. Like it's built within the Microsoft campus. So you always
Hmm.
stay with people who are Microsoft. You eat with them, you speak with them, you have relationships with them, you stay in the Microsoft universe, which is something that's also there with Google and Apple. Like they build their campuses to sort of build that. Dude, it's happening across the street from me. Like Swiggy is building campuses right now. Like they're building campuses
Uh-huh.
within the office space so that people never leave. And
Mm.
the idea is basically what Scandinavia has, but really fucked up, where the
Mm.
company takes over all of the tasks for your well-being, like good
Mm.
quality food, good quality water, general place to sleep, security, all of this, community, yada yada yada. And in return, it asks you to give it all of your time, which is a little fucked up because the problem is, again, when you work for a company, at the end of the day, they own the means of production, which is the general idea of communism, where the idea is that when potentially Krishna works for a company that asks him to, create like a user experience or whatever the fuck, at the end of
Mm.
the day, whatever he makes is owned by them. All of the work that you do during the time, it could be hundreds of hours, thousands of hours, a couple of years, you don't own any of it, which is wild, right? Like you don't own your work, which technically also
Mm.
means that you're not allowed to use it in any other ways. There are a lot of restrictions on being able to share it, all of that, which if you expand it down to the economy and everything else that we have, you're basically creating a
Mm.
large body of, you could say, people working on the same thing hundreds of times, but never being available to the public, but also sort of creating a system where you're indebted to the organization till the end of time. Like, if the organization tomorrow decides, by Krishna,
Mhm.
Krishna has no leverage. All of the work that he does belongs to them. All of
Yeah.
the resources that he gets are theirs. All of the access to things that he gets is theirs. It's like when Krishna decides, this is not what I want, it's like a gigantic part of his life is cut out, and the resources and everything that gave him the ability to do that is cut out. What does he do? So it's like the
Mhm.
only way that I see this changing is fundamentally where you move closer to the idea of the communist thought of how this is supposed to work. Where the idea is that one, from my perspective, the first level of that is transparency, where the idea is
Mm.
you should know how big the pie is and what you're a part of. So, as an example,
Mhm.
let's say if Krishna is working on a project and the company raises $1 billion, the first person that they should inform is Krishna, which almost never
Mm.
happens. Like
Mm.
VC funded firms tell the employees
Mm.
last, the investors are first, the founding team is first, the management team is first, the employees
Mm.
are considered a liability, which I think is wrong. Like
Mm.
Krishna should know everything, because why shouldn't he?
Mm.
Like the only reason the company continues to function is because he's working in there. So
Mm.
first level has to be transparency, where he knows how big the pie is and what's happening. Second, once he knows how big the pie is, he should also know what's happening with all those resources. So as an example, why don't you know what the founder makes? Why don't you know what your manager makes? Why don't you know what your peer makes? Why does your peer not know what you make? And you're like, yeah, but
Mm.
if you knew that, it would create jealousy and all of that shit. But I'm like, listen, that is secondary. The first thing is, why are you unwilling to put out numbers to your own team members? Why is it okay for an external firm to know these numbers, but not the people
Mm.
doing the work? That is where you
Mm.
have weird shit where they might negotiate a contract with you, which is very exploitative, but they're like, shh, don't tell him.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that is considered normal. There's also the fact that
Yeah.
exclusivity is built into it, which is fundamentally problematic. Where um, if Krishna tomorrow decides to work on the podcast, and he works for a company right now, and during the time that he works on the podcast, it takes 10 hours a day. 10 hours a week approximately. And he allocates the time, some of it during company hours, some of it during his off time, some of it during the weekends. In his contract with most companies, there will be a policy which says you cannot work on anything of your own. And if you do, it belongs to the company. The ones who are
Yeah.
slightly more lenient will say that it doesn't belong to us, but if you work on it, you're supposed to inform us. And we will tell you whether you're allowed to work on it or not. Somehow you're supposed to take permission. Third, if they don't have this, they might have something like a blanket clause which says that you're allowed to do whatever the fuck you want, but if you do, it's not supposed to violate specific policies that they've defined. And if you think about it, all of these rules will apply to most people who are there in the employee hierarchy, like the pyramid. But the further up you are in the pyramid, the less those rules apply. So someone who's like, let's say, the
Mm.
CTO, the CMO, the CFOs, or even like a high level VP or managers, they will have multiple companies that they're a part of. They might potentially be on a part of boards. They might potentially have investments in other firms, and that's considered okay. And I'm like, wait, okay, so let's look at it. There's a pyramid. If you distribute resources through the pyramid in terms of salaries, access to information, access to network, access to whatever the fuck, planning and yada yada yada, all of it is focused and concentrated on the top, and it's getting lesser and lesser as you go down. And
Right.
somehow the maximum amount of restrictions for what you're allowed to do is put on the fucking bottom layers. What the fuck? Shouldn't the top layer be the one that shouldn't be able to do that? Like, if technically you're a CEO, you're not allowed to fucking even smell another company in any way. Because you
Yeah.
should be doing only one fucking thing, you bitch. This, you
Yeah.
get up every
Yeah.
day, you sleep every day, you breathe this, you die with this.
Yeah.
In comparison,
In
Krishna,
yeah.
who's literally getting paid fucking 40 grand maybe, or 60 grand or 100 grand, he should be able to do whatever the fuck he wants.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned this. Like, it reminds me of the Indigo CEO. So the previous one, he literally created his own airline after he left. But I've seen that in my last company where I won't name it, but the we were basically told. So one of the employees was very successful in a business. He created something really cool and made a lot of money. He made in millions, and he did it from knowledge he acquired from the company, which is natural. Like
Where
one
else?
of the
You're only
reasons we're
working in.
working
Yeah.
there is to like level up and get better. And he did that, and he's like, he found something high leverage and he took it. And the founders found out, and it's so funny when they made us change their contracts, okay, and almost everybody just crossed it out. It just basically said, whatever you create, we also own. Like, so
Yeah. It's
yeah, and
insane.
just
It's
smiley
wild.
faces. It's like it's nothing. It's nothing, and it's like that is such hypocrisy. What the
Exactly.
fuck? Like, what
Exactly.
do you mean? And it was so ironic that the reason the company was really successful is because of it, not the founder, but in his employee. Like, there was
Exactly.
one employee, and I'm just like, the
See,
fuck?
this is the reason that if you look at how a lot of our policies are made, right? It's like we moved away from feudalism to capitalism, but it just became a cleaner version of it. It's not very different. Where the idea is you're supposed to control labor. That is what primary. Dude, it's in the naming conventions, bro. Like when you do an MBA, you're called human resources. You're not a human, you're a resource. You're a fungible asset at the end of the day.
Ooh.
Like when you look at the balance sheet, the salaries show up as liabilities, right? They don't show up as investments in your business. You're literally a liability for the organization that you're helping create. It's there in the way they talk about it on a day-to-day basis. Like when you potentially, let's say, ask for an upgrade for your machine, that will go under an expense. I'm like, no, bitch, that is a fucking investment. Like Krishna brought new hardware into your firm, you little fuck. He didn't
Yeah,
reduce your bottom line, he increased it. They'll be
yeah.
like, yeah, but I have to pay depreciation now. I'm like, fuck, that's like looking at the wrong side of things every fucking day.
Exactly. It's not the value added. And it also gives the wrong incentive for adding, not to add value as well. Like,
Exactly, which is the
you're
reason.
part of this hamster wheel.
Yeah,
You are
that
part of the
is
hamster wheel.
that is the reason the I think from my perspective the ecosystem is broken, not because there are not good people in it. I'm like, their intentions are off, not because they want them to be off, but because they're trained in a weird way. And second, companies are fundamentally working to get fucked. Like when you start with the idea that I'm going to do things and I'm going to do things for revenue, it's like the incentive structure from the foundation is wrong. It's like, imagine if Krishna starts his podcast and he's like, at the end of the year I will make $1 million from it. He's gonna do really dumb shit. Like Krishna will be like, okay, I'm on month two. I don't have close to $1 million. I need to get a lot of attention on my podcast to get $1 million. He will do shit that is extremely wild potentially, but it might be something that's completely not aligned to what the idea of the thing was supposed to be. And as he gets closer to the deadline, he'll start doing even more insane shit. And every company does that daily by fucking taking VC capital. If Krishna gives $100,000 and he's like, as Series A, I will get out by someone who gives $1 million, that means that a company that I got $100,000 put into is worth $1 million today. It now has to be worth 10 million today for it to potentially get me that return. He's gonna sit on your fucking ass and ask you to make sure that you get the 10 million. I'm
Yeah.
like, they literally are signing up to, and the founders won't do any of that. Obviously, they'll give it to Krishna. They're like, hey, Krishna, we got you on a salary of 3 lakh. Work, bitch. That's also a ratio, by the way. Like,
Like
there's
every
this,
developer is just here, is listening to this. Is like, this is what we are.
dude. Okay, no, I'll give you even further context. So, okay, every when you have a salary amount, right? Like when you give a salary to a person, there is a ratio that's considered. And I've sat in enough technology hiring meetings to go like it's considered 1:4. So the idea is if Krishna is paid 2 lakh, he needs to add 8 lakh worth of developer value to justify his salary. So from day one, you're already getting fucked by about 4 times your value. Because if you come to the table and you're worth 10 lakh, I will negotiate you down to 2.5 lakh because that is the ratio that the company will probably pay you in. They're like, all the other money we like to keep. So
That's
you're
so
like,
messed up.
yeah, but it's also the opposite side if you look at it, where the idea is that if you're working for a company for 8 hours a day and they're paying you a salary and they're profitable, you're already 4 times more profitable on your own if you figure out how to figure out your shit. So reconsider, leave.
And like you sound somewhere like somebody that obviously doesn't like capitalism, but of course you need to live in a world that is capitalistic, especially India.
That's why fun
But
communist.
to be honest, and yeah, but like, how do you navigate money that way? Like, how do you
Oh,
navigate money this way?
so this is my way of seeing it. So basically, okay, capitalism fundamentally works on the idea that the thing that is king is capital. Like the idea that's considered the root of the entire situation is where money is the thing that decides action. The entire system is built on that. Like there is no person who's supposed to do a job unless they're given money. That is the fundamental idea of capitalism, one. And second, that is the reason that money gets the highest amount of, you could say, traction within the system. Where the idea is if you don't have money, you're fucked. Because we've been trained to also think of it like that. It's like, if I don't have money as an individual, I am not a productive member of society. I am fucked. That is how I'm supposed to see things. So if I modify that and I actually make it fun communist, the difference between this and communism is that communism basically goes, fuck money for a second, put that aside. Great idea. Yes, we need that. We put it here. It's a form of, exchanging things, yada, yada, yada. But we put it there. The main thing that you have to fundamentally get to is one, what does a person work like? Like, what are their needs and wants, yada, 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 desires, and how can you fulfill them? So, communism's idea fundamentally stems from the idea that the society that we live in is, give or take, a reflection of the mode of production. So, give or take, imagine if you consider, if you go back all the way to like times when when you don't have advanced technology, where somewhere in the hunter-gatherer phase, the society at that point was built around the people who are sort of going hunting, gathering things, figuring out where resources are, and then migrating. So the lifestyle is built around that. Then you move from that to something like an early farming society, which eventually leads to feudalism. In feudalism, again, because it's slavery, fundamentally, most of society, even the times that you talk about early India, right, where we were doing high scale
Right.
creation of things, most of those people were slaves. Like
They
the
were.
actual people who owned them were like princes of like high rich houses, but most of the common population was literally very fucking broken. But their lifestyle was primarily oriented around that form of production. Now you move to something like modern era where it's capitalism. So if you look at our society, it's primarily built around as a reflection of the mode of production, which in this case is you have to go to office at a specific time frame. You have to have a set of productive hours every day. The company works in a specific way. That is the life of the largest part of the population that is urban that we know of. And the rural populations are being affected because the same systems are being applied for them. So now, if you take that as the context, the communist perspective on this is that the reason this happens is where concentration of power happens. In the case of capitalism, concentration of wealth, which makes a single individual or a set of individuals or an entity or a company extremely powerful because of the access to capital, which controls people directly. And in the case of a system like communism, where the idea is that the means of production should be owned by the person who makes the thing or as close to it as possible. So, as an example, let's say if Krishna is a designer, the work that he does should, in principle, be also be co-owned by Krishna, and he should be able to make money from it in the long term. Plus, he should be able to own the tools that he uses to make that. So, let's say if it's Adobe software, that is
Right.
the reason that subscription software is considered to be a scam in some capacity, where you're renting it, you never have it. Like tomorrow, if
Yeah.
they decide to pull it, you're literally fucked. You can't do anything
Yeah.
because
And
that
it's
is the
so
industry
expensive.
standard.
Yeah.
Exactly. But ignoring the money aspect of it, it's also the fact that you don't own it. Like you have no say in it. You don't hold any leverage, which is the
Right.
thing which is a negative. Like when you used to buy software, you would get the software and you could keep that till the end of time. And if you are happy with it, you're happy with it. That's gone now. You have to rent it. That's again very, very sort of negative in the way that it works out. The second part of it is how exactly do you see money as a resource individually? I think that's where capitalism shines actually, the retraining that it does. So if you look at how our parents taught us, and that is all systems even after that, the idea is like if you make money, one, you're supposed to save it, obviously. Second, you're supposed to hoard as much of it as possible. And third, there is never a limited amount where you go, I am okay. No, ask more. Because why wouldn't you? That is what you're
Yeah.
supposed to do. So
Yeah.
if you look at all of the three as sayings within the capitalistic framework, they make a lot of sense. You're like, one, I should have a lot of money. Second, I should fucking stack it and keep it in safes and have as high a stack as possible. And third, I should make sure that I keep it for myself because that is the thing that has the maximum amount of power in any capacity. Not only buying ability, but also social leverage, yada, 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 all of that shit. Fucking brilliant, makes sense, logically aligns. Now if you go down to the, what do you call that, like a sort of communist view of the thing, it's that sure, capital is the thing that makes it all happen, yada yada yada, but the thing is that the thing that you have to continue living with is the ramifications of that capital usage. So as an example, let's say Krishna is the boss of a company. He decides to create policies that require people to work a specific way. He's literally creating a set of people who are going to be a specific way because of the instructions that he's made with his money. That social capital that you are creating is getting created from your capital. Most people will be like, I'm not responsible for it. I'm like, but you are. That's the reason I'm like founders who go that the culture of my company is what it is. We just create high quality work. I'm like, actually, you create very shitty quality work because your policies are built to fuck with people. Because that is the fundamental thing that they would post forth. They're like, I am trying to make a profitable company. I'm like, but your definition of profitable looks at just capital. I would look at profitable from the context of the fact, is the population of people who were there inside your company better off or worse off after you left? And second, the product that you created or a service that you created, did it solve the problem that you were trying to solve, or did you just fucking do it for the money? Which in most cases will be for the money. So I'm like, it's not even aligned with capitalism in the context of like the quality shit. Like you're supposed to cut corners, you're supposed to fuck with vendors, you're supposed to not people pay on time, you're supposed to keep the money for as long as possible. I'm like, all of the things that capitalism pitched in terms of efficiencies are also the things that they're fighting on day to day. So the fun version of communism that I pitch is give or take one rethinking as to what an individual's perspective on money is. The way I see money primarily is like video game currency. It's great. Like think of money that you have as coin. Like imagine if entirety of life that you have is a physical video game. Consider it to be an RPG of some sort. And at the start of the game, you get a set of coin. Now here's the interesting part. If you're one of us, in the context of the fact, we are in a socio-economic, you could say like a bar, right? There's a pyramid. We're probably in a somewhere, whatever the fuck. So from our perspective, we would fall somewhere between the ranges of middle to upper rich, depending on how it works out and where we are in life. And let's say even if you start at ground zero, like Krishna has nothing on him, he's a baby. I have nothing on me, I'm a baby. At that point, your coin will be the coin that you have that you get as a part of having your parents, having the network, having all of that, which most people ignore, by the way. Like when they discuss
Yeah,
things on a day to
completely.
day basis, they're like, yeah, I have this much money. I'm like, actually, you have way more. You're ignoring all of the social capital that you have because of your
Right.
ability to do things. You're ignoring the safety and security you have by having a network of people that you've interacted with over time. You're also ignoring all of the fucking goods that you've bought. So most people, when they do their evaluation of net worth, they look at shit like stock market shares, all of that shit. They never look at the physical assets that they own. They never look at the people that they have the ability to talk to. They don't even look at shit like, dude, the fact that you belong to a specific set of groups automatically gives you so much capital. Like,
Yeah, for
you
sure.
could call a bunch of people and go, hey, do you want to do a podcast? I'm pretty sure there must be a fucking kid in UP who wants to do a podcast, but nobody's going to talk to that fucker.
Yeah.
So yeah, that automatically changes things. So one is, if you start looking at it as coin, the thing that it changes is that the way my interpretation of it works out is that, let's say if Krishna comes to me and he's like, hey Amit, I need an X amount of money. My way of seeing it as coin also removes it from the idea of that this money is supposed to make me more money later. So as an example, let's say if you look at all the things that are around us that are exploitative, right? It's like whenever the squeaky guy comes, he's getting gypped, like he's getting fucked. I'm like,
Yeah.
tip them generously, like as much as you can, because they're getting fucked. And you tip them not because it's your responsibility. It's because, let's say, if you're a squeaky guy, you're getting fucked. What would you prefer? You would prefer if people fucking paid you extra because they know you're getting fucked. So just pay them more. And what that automatically does is, once you start disassociating from the idea that the money is just for you, but it's more like a community transactional thing that makes systems better, it also moves you into a territory where you're likely to make improvements or changes around you where you feel that they're necessary. So, as an example, let's say I think that the Swiggy system is broken. I will pay them more because I think it's low. Someone else will be like, but that is a company's responsibility. I'm like, I can't fight that though, right? I can't go inside Swiggy and tell them what to do. But I can make a contribution from my side to what I think the thing should look like, and I'll make whatever version it is. I know when I'm in a better financial state, I'll give them as much money as I can. When I'm in a worse financial state, I'll give lesser, but I'm contributing. That is something that I would like to do. That is one way of adding to the thing. Second is, from the perspective of how we work out as friends and family, one of the things I realized is most of the family is actually pretty fucked up. Like, if we get born into these institutions, and we might have good parents, but at the end of the day, the extended Indian families are some of the worst of the world. Like, if I have to consider the scum of the earth, extended Indian families is what we should have as a standard. I'm like, they have opinions that they shouldn't have. They try to get into situations that they have nothing to do to something with. They
Yeah.
actually feel the need to verbalize a lot of things that most people would consider inappropriate in a private setting, but they somehow feel appropriate to do it in a public setting because they consider family. Even besides that, a lot of them are just dumb people.
There is that entitlement. There is that entitlement.
There
Yeah.
is there is a lot of entitlement. There's also the fact that there's also a lot of dumb people. Like, most extended families have a lot of stupid people. Like, we should acknowledge them and not give them the ability to talk. Or if they talk, we're like, please don't. Just don't. But no, we don't, because we've taught not to say that. You're supposed to listen. I'm like,
Yeah. That is
if someone says something stupid, it could be your grandmother, and you're like, no, you shut the fuck up and you learn. Or if you can't learn, you don't talk, because that is not the right thing to say anymore. That is not appropriate. And if you can't learn, don't tell me, go tell other people. But if you look at that as a thing, I think that also fundamentally is the reason I picked the idea of us choosing our families on our own, which is something that we've already started doing. Like, if you look at how a lot of close circles of friends work out right now, I would consider them more family than a lot of extended family, because how many of my cousins would I call if I was in prison? Not a lot. Like, tomorrow, let's say if something fucked up happened, how many extended
man.
family members would you reach out to? Like, I'm more likely to reach out to you rather than a family member. I'm like, at least Krishna might fucking pick up. I don't know what the fuck the family member will fucking say. Neither will they help.
Yeah, I always see
So-
this with money as well. Like, but it brings me to an interesting question as well. Like, you redefine wealth to a degree in where you
Yeah.
the way you mentioned it. You broke down wealth in a different way you could potentially see it. So right now, wealth is measured in terms of money, but you measured it in different instances. Could you clearly define those, like, different
Yeah, the
ways we should be
boxes.
measuring, an individual should be measuring their lives, let's say?
Yeah. So I put at the highest level. So I think the most common version of it is that we put hard cash as the highest value. Like liquid cash is considered the highest form of capital in the current world, and depending on the currency, it's the USD. Depending on the region, yada yada yada. My version of it would be fuck that. The highest currency is technically social capital. Like everything else comes after that. So, as an example,
Yeah.
let's say the ability for Krishna to walk into a place is give or take the social capital he holds. He could have no money but still be able to walk into a place. That is because he, for whatever the reasons are, either has network access, has the access of some people inside of it who he's willing to talk to, or he has the ability to go through because of whatever the reasons are, and he can walk through that system. That automatically gives you a leverage that is not something that you can objectively sort of put down, but that should be the starting foundation where you try to identify what is your social capital and where your standing is, because the that is basically what powers most of the economy. Like if you think about it, this is also where we had an interesting conversation where rich people are also some of the worst people when it comes to how they handle money. They tend to be the ones who will bargain the most. They'll be the ones who negotiate the hardest. They'll be the ones who also ask for the highest amount of discounts and information whenever they can. And they want to be treated in a specific privileged way. I'm like, that is weird considering you have the most resources. Like, you should be the one who does it the least. Like, the hierarchy should be the one who has the least amount of money, should be the one who bargains the most, compared to the one who has the highest amount of money, who's like, I will get a good deal. Why are you trying to get a good deal? So, my perspective is social capital is what sort of controls that, and it's sort of trained into the system, which is the reason you can hack it. So one of the things I realized with this, which is extremely saddening, but it is a part of it, was when I went to theater. Right, I went through a theater production, through two theater productions.
Oh, cool.
The way your costuming works out is literally how you're treated in the entire way the world works out. Like nothing else is fundamentally more important. Like if you had to put on an individual day-to-day basis how you're likely to be treated through a scenario, it will come down to costuming before anything else. Nothing else matters, by the way. Like if you fucking dress a specific way, the way an entire population of friends, family, and people around you will treat you will change completely. And it's sad, but it is exactly that. So I'll give you context for why. So when I went through the second theater production, right, I decided in the first theater production I was a clown, and that was very fun. In the second one, they said you can be any character that you want, and I was like, I want to be a janitor. I want to be, and they were like, no, you can be literally anything. You can literally be whatever the fuck you want. Janitor. I want to be the janitor. And you're like, okay, fuck it. Yeah, do it. Like, and the thing that is beautiful right now, right, it's that everyone went through the process of sort of identifying what the story was, where they came from, where they're heading, all of that. And when they would talk to each other, they learned each other's names in the theater and all that. They knew that I was the janitor, and they, throughout the fucking thing, just called me the janitor. No one asked about his name. No one cared about what the janitor's name was, because the uniform was the thing that you're supposed to also ignore in real life. Like if you see a janitor walking by, you don't give a fuck. His job is to clean. He will clean. He'll fuck off. That is the height of the social interaction you want with him. If he tells you to get out of the way when he's cleaning, you'll do that. But outside of that, he doesn't exist. So in the theater production, even if they know it's Amit, technically he's also wearing the janitor uniform. Technically, janitors are someone I don't care about. So I don't care. I literally don't care. And it shows up. So the thing that was interesting was on the opposite side, at some point in the exercise, right? What happened was that, okay, so I was taking the theater class and it was really fun. So I told everyone to dress up as 1940s New York. And there was this bar that was there in New York. And I said, you're all, give or take, associated with this bar, with this establishment. So be whatever you want to be. And I'm a 1940s North American New York reporter. I wore like fucking suspenders, a white shirt, pants, and like a tiny cap. And I'm like, I am doing like a newspaper reading, like a tiny clip that I want of people who work at the bar. I have no stories. I'm just fucking, I need something. So I've come here and I'm doing a story on this bar, technically, right? and people came dressed in fucking wild ways and were going through this interaction. So there was someone who was Sharara who Lake played, and she was like the siren of the bar. Like she's someone who's everybody from everywhere comes to see because she's the showstopper, yada yada yada. So everyone did their version. Like there was a bartender, there was someone who had a coffee shop next to the bar. They created the characters. The interesting thing happens with Monish, right? So Monish came dressed in all black. Like he had a black suit, black pants, a white shirt on the inside, and he wore like an Amish hat, like that's full brim hat. And he sits across from me and I go, "Hello, so who are you?" And he says, "I am the man." I'm like, "Okay, who are you, the man?" And he's like, "I own this bar. I own this establishment." So he made himself the kingpin. Monish literally, of a hypothetical universe, he made himself the one that owns that institution, right? So this is where it gets fascinating, where everyone in the class after that had their stories start revolving around him. Like everybody's reality got bent a little bit, and either they wanted to be friends with him, or they had some sort of relationship with him, or they had some sort of interaction with him, and everything became oriented around fucking Monish. And the reason it was interesting was there were people in the class who hated him, who disliked him, and now they liked him. Like this, they were like, "I think I like you now," because his role in the thing became monumental now. He became, in some capacity, like a figurative head of the
Yeah.
system. Even though it's a made up system, they wanted to be friends with him. So it was insanely beautiful for me to see, because I was like, I have patriarchy being created in a petri dish right now.
Actually, that's mad.
Exactly. And I get to be the janitor and I get to see all of it.
Yeah, and everybody ignores you, but you can see everything for what it is as well.
Exactly. And it's beautiful. And they were like, "You do whatever
That
you want
is
because I'm the janitor." So I also get to do whatever the fuck I want because they have no expectations from the janitor. So the janitor is also the freest role humanly possible because nobody expects anything from the janitor.
I love the inversion between you, like him at the top and you at the bottom. You guys must have had the best conversation after that.
So no, I never talked about it because I was like, no, this is just fun to watch because again, you don't
Fair.
discuss the meta of it. It also ruins the immersion of the thing. I
That's
was like,
true.
dude, just watching it was fascinating. So the thing that I realized, so when you split it up, right, in terms of how I see wealth, I would say one is costuming. Like I actually put costuming as a fundamental now thing that I put as a box. Like your wardrobe is a part of it. Whether you like it or not, you will be judged by it. And my perspective on sort of dealing with that as an individual would be to one, figure out what do you stand for and try and find clothing that most closely aligns with it. Because people will identify with the things that you wear. And if they're things that you don't believe in, don't wear them. That is how it will work. Because humans are fundamentally stupid. For all the intelligence we have, we're like, it look like this, so I will fucking think about it like this. So try to figure out what you stand about and wear that shit. Second, own the fucking thing that you wear. Like if you're wearing something, if you're not comfortable, everybody knows. So if you're not comfortable, just don't wear it. That is the best fucking thing. Third, if someone potentially judges you for what you wear, for whatever their opinions about the thing are, fuck them. They don't matter. Because one of the things that will happen is this will apply especially for women potentially, where they wear something and it's considered inappropriate or not the right thing in various capacities. That will happen for you if you potentially. So when it comes to a lot of my clothing, it actually comes from the women's section. Because one of the things I've realized is specific clothing is made better for women. So as an example, if you try to buy jackets at any point, right, anything that is like an overall overcoat thing, men's jackets come in specific sizes and very specific cuts, and they don't go away from that because you're supposed to do that. Women's jackets come in hundreds of shapes and millions of colors and a lot of different designs. And they're also more likely to be something that aligns with the body shape. Like they'll have a form to them. Men's jackets will always be straight. So it's like I would recommend everybody browse the women's section or all sections, irrespective of gender. The second thing that I would put down as the most important is social capital. Again, wherever you're standing is from your perspective, identify the circles that you have, figure out, I think the easiest way of answering this in terms of social capital would be, let's say tomorrow you're completely broke. All the money that you have has burnt away. All the savings that you have are gone. All the shares, stocks, everything is gone. All the resources that you have as physical assets that can be sold have no value anymore, or they're gone. So your
Hmm.
computers, your expensive merch, your devices,
Hmm.
they're all gone. You can't sell shit anymore. You're literally at monetary value zero. What are the
Hmm.
systems that you have the ability to fall back on? Is your social capital. Like, who are the
Hmm.
people that you will count on? Who are the people that you fall back to? Because that is, give or take, money that you have that you're not actively using, but it's there all the time.
Hmm.
uh, Third, I would put it down to potentially network connections. Like, this is a part of
Hmm.
social capital, but slightly different, where the idea is, let's say tomorrow, if you're in trouble, which are the sources that you would reach out to for work?
Hmm.
So potentially, how exactly do you fix the problem of resources? Like, let's say if you
Hmm.
wanted food and you wanted to figure out how to do it, which network connection do you reach out to? And finally, after this is hard cash, all of that shit, like whatever you have as money, whatever you have as assets and all of that. But I would critically say that I would recommend we look more at the assets first and then the capital, because the focus tends to be on the capital more rather than the assets. I'm like, the fact that you have a phone means you have access to the internet and all the learning resources in the world, which is not considered. What's considered is that the phone is worth 30,000 rupees. That doesn't matter. That
Hmm.
was the capital, but all of the things that it does and it gives as value are
Hmm.
ignored. Like, your Mac or your Windows is not worth 59,000 rupees. It's worth all of the things it can do.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah. Actually, that's so true. That's such a
That
good
is
way of looking at technology.
exactly, which is the reason that a lot of things are broken. It's like, even if you look at a house, right? People are like, I have a house worth a crore. No, you have a house with a specific amount of space, water supply, electricity, and a specific place that it's in. It has a specific value for the region it's in. All of that shit you
Hmm.
ignore. You're like, it's worth a crore. It's such a stupid simplification. Like, you lose all this nuance and you're like, number. Yeah. Because then
Look
discussions
at
are also so much stupider, right? Like, everything
yeah.
will sort of like, how much does it make? Yeah, but what color is it? Who cares? How much does it make? Fuck off.
That's beautiful. You can also see value in things that are, to a lot of people, arbitrary. Like giving that little tip. That's such a beautiful way of looking at the world and also contributing to it because you reorient yourself around what is the maximum amount of good I can do.
Exactly. So I'll
And
give you, this happens
hmm,
in prisons and music festivals the best. Let's say at a music festival,
what?
you could be
Huh.
walking around with a lac on you, like cash, hard cash, right? The guy with a fucking LED float toy is worth more. You don't have one. You don't have one. The guy with the weed has more capital than you right now. Like, you don't have
Yeah.
it. That's it. Like, at, let's say you're at a party and you're the doctor, you have more capital when someone fucking gets sick, obviously. So the same thing applies.
Hmm.
It's like, the richest guy in the room is only rich because we make him so. Like,
Hmm.
that is the reason when people go, hey, if you could interact with someone who's rich, wouldn't you want to? I'm like, no, I would interact with a person if they're a good person. If, let's say,
Hmm.
Musk asked for a meeting for whatever the reasons are, or if you actually end up in a situation where you can be in the room with a person who's considered rich, and you go into that room only because that person is rich, you're already an idiot. Because one, you don't care what that other person does, and second, they will treat you like you look at them as a bank.
Hmm.
So I'm like,
That's
you
true.
don't enter rooms that you don't like just because there's money in it. Because if you do, that money looks at you back in the same way, because they're also dumb as fuck. They will interpret that in the same way. You will talk to them in that way.
Hmm. And it
And
becomes
that's why we should
so
murder Musk.
lifeless.
What happened? Fucker won't die. Fucking hell, it's fine.
Oh god. Hey, Mark Zuckerberg might get to him.
Ah, let's murder both of them. Oh, that would be nice. Double murder.
Like
Double
that's an
billionaire
interest,
murder. Oh, shit.
man. Like, what do you think of this move? Like with social media, with threads?
I have no idea. I literally saw that today. Like, I had a friend come up to me and go, "Hey, are you on Threads?" I'm like, "What the fuck is Threads?" He's like, "There's a new
Yeah.
social media platform." I'm like, "Why? There's one more shit." Oh fuck.
I learned this from a friend, okay, and it was so cool. Every 2 years, if you'll plot the curve, there'll be a new
There's
social
a
media
social media
platform
thing.
or a new
Yeah, 100%.
new play, and Facebook copies it because they
Yep.
can't stay relevant otherwise. That's the way they have to adapt otherwise. And I hate that
So
this has become the standard in the industry because they've achieved this level of success. It's like, oh, we should all follow them, and we've followed them, and now like so many apps copy other apps, and sometimes you just can't convince your boss like, listen, we should probably do this, but fuck it, if we copy this, it's more in line with what you think is right, and it's much
exactly.
easier to communicate that. But it's kind of sad.
Dude, this is the reason actually I want you to actually play around with hardware, at least as a research topic. So I'll send you something called the Cyber Deck. Okay. If you Google for it, you'll find it
Hmm.
too. So Cyber Deck is basically a competition where you and I can sign up for it too. It's happening right now actually. There's one Cyber Deck challenge happening. That's why I was Googling the shit. And it will end on
Hmm.
August 15th. And the idea of a
Hmm.
Cyber Deck is to make a computing device that has a screen, a
Hmm.
functional keyboard, and some way of getting input and output. So you can have
Hmm.
whatever else you want. So people, when they participate in these competitions, right, they make wild devices, like the sort of shit that you would see in spy movies. People have made, like, this
Hmm.
is electronics fucking that are made, and like there's a guy who made an entire computer inside an ammo case that's there from the United States military. Like the entire computer fits inside of that, and you open it and there's a fucking computer inside. Someone has made it in like a submersible trunk. Like this is something that was built for like carrying around electronics in like a secure environment. He just built a computer inside of it. You open it and it's a fucking entire console. Someone built
No
a
way.
hand version which sort of fucking flips over as soon as you touch the screen. It goes up. And
That's
these
mad.
are individuals who are 3D printing parts, making things with aluminium and just putting it together. None of this will ever make it to consumer electronics because companies will not do this at scale. The same thing that happens with software, all of this gets a cut in hardware. Like by the time a multinational corporation puts something out there, they will remove everything that's not essential. So I'm like,
Hmm.
I did not know this, yo. There's an entire fucking sector of electronics which we've never considered which exist, but we don't know they exist
Yeah.
because again, how many people will make? Dude, I can guarantee that there is no arc lamp exactly like the one that I've made anywhere in India
Hmm.
because nobody's probably tried it. This thing doesn't exist anywhere right now. I have an
Yeah.
item that nobody has. Like in terms of
Yeah.
wealth, if someone said sell it to me, I'm like, I won't. And you're like, I would like one. Sucks balls. Make it. Like,
Spend the
go
100 hours.
print. Go print 100 hours printing the shit, putting it together.
That's beautiful. Like, it really speaks to humanity in that we can make stuff like that, and that's incredible
Yeah,
actually.
in
And I love how
comparison, we've been told instead of doing that, you should go to a company, spend about 8 hours a day sitting there to get coin, which you will now go to fucking spend on Amazon to fucking buy the Ark, which I will charge 25,000 for. Buy it because I'm
Mhm.
supposed to. I'll charge 50,000. Why? Because I said it comes with an OLED display. Dude, the fucking OLED display is a piece of technology that is standardized. You can get a fucking screen for 200 bucks, 1,000 bucks.
What's also incredible? It's like, oh man, like, fuck, I lost my train of thought. um, like when what was I going to say? Yeah, when the whole system, the whole capitalist system is built around like these optimizations and products that like software. But now when I think about it, if you flip the system where it is on social capital, the end output of that, the let's say capitalistically, let's say in terms of money, would be much greater when you think about it. And it's crazy that that inversion worked. Like the principal
Exactly.
inversion works perfectly in this model of capitalism. Actually, I don't want to even call it capitalism because it feels icky,
Fun
but
communism.
fun communism.
Yeah, so think about it this way. It's like the thing that I also potentially would put as like the biggest part of wealth, which 90% of the people never will get to because they'll die and they'll be like, this sucked, is quality of life actually. That is the highest form of capital. So if you think about it, if someone goes, hey Amit, are you rich? I'm like, not monetarily, but in terms of time, I have all the time in the world, bitch. Like you are on a schedule of your company, organization, VC, whoever the fuck you decided to be a slave of. I am not. Tomorrow, if I decided I want to go to an island and stay there for the rest of my life, I can. You can't do that, and you're fucked for that. Like, there's nothing in the world that someone could say that I am richer than you. I'm like, but at the end of the day, you're a slave to that. So,
Hmm.
if you consider freedom as a part of it, I think that is the highest thing, because what it fundamentally constrains is like the capital also leads to like a level of being weighed down. So let's say if you had 10 crores in assets, Krishna needs to maintain the 10 crore in assets, find people who will maintain it, not fuck him over while he's doing it, with all of the things that the Indian system trained him to, where everyone's trying to fuck him and all that. Live with that pressure on a day-to-day basis. Continue to
Hmm.
accumulate more, because it's okay. If during the duration that Krishna got to the 10 crores, if he got to the 5 crores, and he said, you know what, I'm going to take a break and come down to 1 crore, you will be murdered by everybody in your circle who's like, you're absolutely insane. Why would you go
Hmm.
poorer? Why would you lose money? You're
Hmm.
supposed to continue making more. I don't know to what end, but you're supposed to.
uh, yeah.
But in comparison, if you don't do that, let's say you fucking decide to look at quality of life. Let's say if tomorrow you can buy a good lunch, you buy it and you're like, I bought it because I could, and tomorrow if I can't, I'll figure it out. Much easier.
Hmm.
It also makes sharing
Yeah.
easier. So, as an example, one of the things that I've learned is that if you can share whatever the fuck you have, like that's the reason I
Hmm.
think the discussion with ChatGPT and all of that, my perspective is the information age is dead. There is no more
Hmm.
information that is as valuable as any human will decide. It's going to move
Hmm.
to curation at this point, because ChatGPT is a thinking machine.
Hmm.
Anything that you can think of, I can guarantee it can do it better. Like,
Hmm.
it just doesn't have the right question asked, but I can guarantee it can do it better. So I'm like,
Yeah.
as soon as you have that, all lawyers, all consultants, anyone who goes, I have information that you don't, and I would like to be paid for it. You're useless. Like, you're
Hmm.
basically waiting for the time where they realize they don't need you. Second, from
Hmm.
my perspective, once you move away from the idea of closed source information and you move to the idea of communal information, then you basically get to the point where instead of one person becoming a billionaire, you have a whole bunch of people who are a set of people who are rich. So I'll give you context, okay? There is this company called 37 Signals. It's an American based firm, and they are the creators of this thing called Firebase. Like, it's a project management app. They're also the ones who made this email system that you might have seen if you're on Twitter. It's called hey.com, that is powered by them. Basecamp is,
Yeah.
sorry, what the software that they made. If you've ever used Ruby on Rails or if you've heard of it, the framework was made by that company. So
Hmm.
37 Signals internal culture is interesting because all of them are a very small team. Like, they're a team of 30 to 40, I think. But instead of there being one rich fucker, they're about a set of 40 people who are millionaires in some capacity. Like, all of them could buy a Ferrari at this point, then they wouldn't be poor in some capacity. Like, they're that
Hmm.
well off. Like, they could buy that
Hmm.
as a thing and not be affected. So
Hmm.
the thing that I'm pitching, even when it comes to fun communism, is within the capitalistic system. Let's say if Krishna works on an idea, if Krishna has 10 people associated with him during that process, he tries to make sure that he splits the booty as evenly as possible. So consider
Hmm.
any job the equivalent of piracy, or like you're a pirate. You're Jack Sparrow, fuck it, why not? And when a job is done, how can you distribute the resources in a way where anyone who needs it more than you gets it, so that the next job becomes easier? So, as an example, let's say if you're in a team where one of the people in your team is someone who doesn't even have health insurance, they're broke as fuck. How can everyone in the team get them to the point that as close to their economic scale as possible? Rather
Hmm.
than Krishna trying to get to competing with Musk, he's like, what if I get everyone around me to a specific threshold and then we'll
Hmm.
figure it out from there? Because what this also
Hmm.
does is, once you get everyone to the same socioeconomic threshold, the discussions are better because all of you can discuss the things without having anxieties of your own. Second,
Yeah.
you have each
Yeah. And
other's
you have
back.
skin in the
Tomorrow, if
game. Yeah.
you have skin in the game, but also if something goes wrong tomorrow, you also know that they are people who care about you and not some
Yeah.
random idea. Because, like, if someone says supervillains, right? There is no supervillains. The people are the fucking thing. Like, when someone says Apple, that's just a made up fucking thing. There is no Apple. There is no
Mm.
Apple. There is no entity. The fucking people are the one who make those decisions. Everything that Apple does is a set of people somewhere who decided. Everything that happens is to a set of people. I'm like, if you don't look at the people and you look at these ideas, then it gets really funky. Like you were like, the company is profitable. The people are poor as fuck, though. Why? Like, what is the word company means a group of people and they're fucked. Like, I remember this as a weird ass discussion. Like, I hate that guy. So at some point, I'm with a friend and she takes me to this thing and we're sitting around and we're smoking and yada yada yada. And there's this guy and he created this company and it's one of those logistical firms that Flipkart and Amazon use, like e-cart in some way. And we're discussing shit, and this is just after the first or second wave of the pandemic, and we're discussing company policies, and he's like, I don't believe in the work from home culture. And I'm like, wait, bitch, we just fucking walked through a global plague. What do you mean you don't believe in a work from home culture? He's like, yeah, I just don't believe productivity, some shit. And I remember losing my mind through this discussion. And he had some weird ass policies. I said, how many employees do you have? He said he had, I think, 220 employees. I'm like, okay, tomorrow if I have to apply for a leave, how do I apply for it? What is the process? He's like, you have to send me a message. I'm like, that is stupid, right? How many people will fucking do that? How many fuckers are going to fucking out of a 220 population fucking thing, messaging the
Mm.
dumb fucking founder who's sitting at the top like a kingpin, say that I want to leave?
Yeah.
And he gave me examples. Yeah, but you look at Reliance, you have to look at Geo, you have to look at, I'm like, why are you looking at Geo? Like, your example of a good human is Ambani? Like, really? Like, that is the standard of operation you want to look at. Like, nobody goes, Reliance is the benchmark of quality products and services. Like, no one goes, yeah, that is the world class people these are. Like, it's
Mm.
known for fucking around with political systems, fucking scrounging through shit, fucking around with people's wealth. They cut corners, they have government contracts, they have connections, they're fucking corrupt as fuck. No one is going to them and going, yeah, they're the hallmarks of purity. Like,
Mm.
what the fuck? And at some point through this entire thing, right, I'm like, okay, listen, wait, let's just do this. What is your definition of what a company is? Like, what is the idea of a company? What is a company? The word. What does it mean to you? What is company? And he's like, a company is something that's supposed to be profitable. I'm like, no.
No. Yeah.
What? No. What is a company? He's like, a company is something that's supposed to make something. I'm like, again, no. A company is a group of fuckers, yo. That is the word. Company is supposed to be a group of people that do something. First, it's the group. That's why it's fucking called the company of heroes. It's called a company because a group at a specific size is a company. You call
Mm.
the people that you hang out with your company. It's in the word. Why did you forget the people, you piece of shit bitch? And yeah, so the discussion really did not go well. At the end, I apologized, shit, which I shouldn't have. But anyway, so the
Yeah.
idea is that, again, we disassociate from the fact that everything is basically people, which is also the reason, like, when I order shit from Amazon, if something is fucked, I consider before returning it, because I'm like, I know there are people on the other side who'll have to deal with the shit. Like, when it comes to you and you have the product in your hand, there's a whole bunch of things that are to go correct for it to get there. So reconsider before sending it back, or try to fix it, or try to figure out why did you buy it if you didn't know how the fuck to fix it or work with it, yada yada yada. Don't just send it back, because someone will have to deal with that garbage. And not all of them
Mm.
have efficient processes yet. They're probably fucked. And that
Mm.
applies for most systems where, again, a lot of the things, like, I had a lamp, right? This is fascinating.
Mm.
Like, I bought a lamp and it was delivered, and they assembled it because Indians are unwilling to assemble anything. It was literally had four screws. It had
Yeah.
four screws. Four fucking screws, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is all you had to do. Someone physically came to my fucking house, took it out of the shit, put it together, 20 minutes of work. They did it with their hand. In
Yeah.
hindsight, I would go, that is so stupid. And I feel ashamed that I'm a baby of that caliber. But yeah, they did that. So the thing was, there was one screw that was missing, right? So there's like screws on all sides. One side has these extra screws that are supposed to be there. One of them is not there. So four screws to hold it, four screws to give it extra support. One of the extra screws is not there.
Yeah.
And he's like, shit, fuck, this will have to be returned to the factory. I'm like, wait, what? He's like, yeah, so we're going to take this back. We will take it all the way back. This will be unpacked, put back in the shit, sent back. They'll set a new unit. I'm like, no, you're not doing that, bitch. I don't want that carbon footprint on me. Fuck that. I keep it without the screw. You go
Uh,
away. Fuck off. No.
just
We're
get the
not sending
screw.
it back. Yeah,
Yeah.
fuck the screw. And I'm like, this is built into everything. Like, I've seen people send back weird ass shit, unwilling to communicate or talk to the person on the other side. They're like, no, Amazon will take it back. I'm like,
Mm.
fuck Amazon. What about the person on the other side? They have to deal with your garbage again. So reconsider for a second. Shipping back, shipping to you, all that packaging, all that form.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Man,
shit.
never thought. It reminds me of a recent thing as well. Like, I had to buy a fridge because ours got fucked, and it was so funny. Like, so went there, got the fridge, and he's like, so they'll deliver it on this day, and then the next day, the guy will come for installation. I'm like, wait,
What installation?
guy is coming? What installation? It's a fridge,
Yeah,
and he's like, so basically, you have to leave the fridge for 2 hours
yeah,
before you plug it in
yeah.
and turn it on. That's
But people don't do
installation.
that.
A
People don't do that.
guy was gonna come to turn it fucking on. And I
Yeah,
was
to
like,
remove it out of the
what?
box. Yeah, yeah, yeah. People don't do that. People don't fucking remove
What the
things out of the
fuck?
box.
That's
They don't do
so
it.
stupid.
But
It's
that's the way it
so
is.
ridiculously stupid.
Dude, okay, listen, that's what I'm trying to say. Indians are, I have discussed this with a lot of people, are actually some of the most entitled pricks on the face of the earth. Like, no one comes close to us. We have a slave labor class, which we have
Hmm.
every day. All of the house help that we have, all of the Swiggy executives, all of the labor that builds our buildings, even the service staff that's guarding our houses and shit, all the security guards, all of these people are slaves. Like, everybody could go,
Hmm.
no, they're not slaves. Ah, they're slaves, bitches. Whether you like it or not,
Hmm.
you're a slave owner, you're a part of it, you're a part of the system. Second, not only are we slave owners, we have a caste system that justifies it. So
Hmm.
every other part of the world, when they came across the slave owner system, eventually the slaves got up and fucking went, nah, I don't want this shit. Indians actually codified it in the fucking culture, and we created a
Hmm.
system where the slaves now believe this is what they're supposed to be, and they will never rebel. And if they do, well, sucks balls, next life, karma shit. Like,
Hmm.
it's fair to think that someone who's unfortunate in India is unfortunate because they have bad karma and they were born in the wrong family. It's such a beautiful system. I'm like, we have figured out large scale slavery with no costs. The slaves want to be slaves. We are a beautiful fucking part of the world. Like, we nailed it.
Oh
Like, not
God.
only will you enslave yourself, but you'll sit on the floor when you come to the house because you don't feel you deserve to sit on the chair.
Man, I feel that. I've seen that, and I'm just like, what is this? Like, what is
It
this?
is
Like,
beautiful. I'm telling you, it's India is a brilliant country when it comes to this. I'm like, it's considered okay. So as an example, one of the things that happened was that during the time that I'm dating Panna right now, at some point, one of my family members felt appropriate enough to go to her family member and ask them, "Hey, what caste or what something you are?" And they had a discussion completely independently on their own for some reason, and it eventually came back to me as information. And I'm like, one, not only are you dumb, but you're actually dumb enough to be inappropriate enough to ask this publicly. Like,
yeah.
not only are you an idiot, but you're a confident idiot who believes in the system. So I'm like, great, like, life must be fun. Like, holy shit, not only did you consider it okay to do this, you somehow consider it okay to do it publicly. Which we have,
You
like,
know.
so our prime minister is fucked up. Like, we have the entire political system right now. There's a reason I don't look at the Indian political system. I'm like, I'm just waiting for the cancer to die. Like, eventually it will die. Till then, we just ignore it. Like, it's going to go to shit either way. Like, you can continue looking at it, but it's absolutely wildly horrible. So I'm like, let's not. Let's look at Russia for a while. By the time either these people die off, or we'll figure it out.
Ignore the tragedy here. So again, it's more entertaining that, anyways.
Yeah, it's that, and
Yeah.
it's just so insanely, like, I have friends, like friends of my age or younger than me, who are like, I understand what Modi is doing, and I'm like, you are the bottom of the barrel. Like, I don't really have a reason to continue talking to you. Like, what part of it? Like, what part of it? And that is the reason it gets interesting, where again, it's considered okay because a lot of people at the end of the day, whether they're educated or they're liberalized or they're Americanized or not, they will fucking still go back to this idea that, hey, my Hindu values are okay and I'm in the majority and I'm not getting fucked. One, you're not even a good Hindu, to be honest, actually. If we go by the standard that was defined, you suck, actually. So, putting that aside, you should walk away from that as a label. But if we align with the other things that you potentially signed up for, like, they fucking made a stand in school and say we're all brothers and sisters and shit. And you're not even fucking following through with the shit that they made you fucking say in school, and the schooling system was already garbage. This was one of the
Mhm.
things that it didn't fuck up, like the pledge of fucking seeing equality and all of that. So I'm like, like, you come from a morally dubious place for me to take you seriously, you dumb fucker. Like, most of them would justify weird things either way. So I'm like, I would argue with you if you came with a point, but you come with stupidity. So, like, a lot of them will not
Oh
come with
god.
arguments at all. They're like, someone told me some shit. What are you reading? I'm like,
Yeah.
good
It
argument.
is. I'm curious. Uh, Something that perplexes me in this conversation is that how a few people can have such great power over so many, and it seems like, I'm still perplexed that exists in the world. It's just like how.
Because we like it, like, okay, look at it in the context of how people work out, and that applies for me too. I'm not fucking lying. That is something that doesn't apply for me. It's like, when you're growing up, you're trained to sort of, one, look at examples, right? And they're supposed to be the best in whatever
Hmm.
capacity. So if you look at, like, religion, it applies to even spirituality. Like, the Buddha is considered the one that you're supposed to look at. There is better and worse. I'm like, it shows up in so many aspects of life that eventually there is a part of your brain that gets trained, and idol worship or looking at an idea or a person becomes enamoring, where you're like, this is the thing that fixes everything, and the responsibility is not on me. And I think that is the biggest reason this happens, where you need anything that can take away responsibility from you as an individual. Because the only reason I would fucking follow up or put a label on myself is because I want to offset something that I would have to technically take ownership for, to something that is not mine
Hmm.
anymore as a thing. So imagine that if something is going wrong and I label that to something external to myself, I don't have to deal with it. Now it's their problem, or that system's problem, or
Hmm.
that idea's problem. So I'm like, I understand why we do it. Like, it's an efficient system. Like, it works really well. So
Mhm.
tomorrow if something is wrong, I'm like, the universe doesn't want me to have it. I do it all the time. It works. Yeah, like, I could feel shitty about it or go, just wasn't meant to be. Or the opposite too, actually, where you don't
Hmm.
have things under control. But basically, what I'm trying to get at is that hero worship is built into the system. Like, we all like to do it. How far away we can
Hmm.
keep ourselves from getting fucked by it is the point. Like, it's like, at some point you realize, doesn't matter who you like. At the end of the day, they do dumb shit. As long as you're willing to call it out, applicable to everyone, you're okay. As soon as you stop doing it, you fucked. Like, whether you
Hmm.
justify someone who's richer than you, whether you justify someone as a family member, whether you justify a political philosophy, whether you justify it for your boss, someone who's a partner, yada yada yada, same shit.
Hmm. Man.
Fun as fuck though. So much fun
Yeah.
comes from that. Like, my favorite version of this is the cargo cult. So there's this.
Huh.
So during the World War, right,
Hmm.
the world was basically going insane and they bombed a lot of places. So there was this specific island which is very remote. I think it's
Hmm.
somewhere close to the Australian belt, like, right at the
Hmm.
bottom, Southeast Asia, yada yada
Hmm.
yada. And it was like still medieval in some capacity. Like, they don't have a lot of tech. They've not really communicated with a lot of the outside world. So it's just a tiny fucking island. So what happened was
Mm-hmm.
during Second World War, at some point, there was a bunch of American paratroopers that got dropped on that island because of the Japanese fucking fights that were happening, and they happened in the areas around it. But there was an entire fucking unit that got dropped here. So the area of people that were around it, right? They ended up creating something called a cargo cult, where they believed these people who had come, these fucking paratroopers, to be gods. They considered them
Mm-hmm.
to be these entities from whatever their mythology was from somewhere else. And this entire cult opened up, which is called a cargo cult, where the entire economy and the system was built around when will the cargo come again? And it is beautiful because it showcases the absurdity of how humans work out, where just because something is external and we don't really understand it, there is a tendency to sort of worship it. Because
Mm-hmm.
when you don't understand it, worshipping sounds like a really good idea somehow. When you request it, you're like, I don't get it, but
Mm-hmm.
help. So yeah, it's very nice. I also like it because there's a variation of it where you can see the ramifications of how this works out. So as an example, there was this specific part of Africa which was very very remote. I think it's somewhere near Zambia, and
Mm-hmm.
during the Second World War again, there was apparently a set of people who again moved into specific parts of Africa because of the shit that was happening in Europe, yada yada yada, and they had a lot of things on them, right? Like accessories and products from the industrial part of the world. So some of the things that they had were watches, like wristwatches. So
Mm-hmm.
this African tribe, they've never had electronics, yo. They've barely even
Mm-hmm.
fucking discovered electricity yet. They're still figuring it out. So they
Mm-hmm.
come across things like watches, which they don't understand. Like they don't know how they work internally. But you find these really highly intricate stone fucking watches that look like a fucking wristwatch, but they don't function. But it's just a version of it. It's like this rock replica of something that you don't understand, that you sort of inscribed into wood because you don't know what it is,
Mm-hmm.
but you can see it and you use the information that you have to create your version of it. And I'm like, that is beautiful because that's all of humanity. Like we just copy
Mm-hmm.
things, and once in a while we copy things and we start worshipping them because we're insane. Like someone does something and we like it so much, we're like, must be God. What is God? Everything. Thank you. Great.
Man, I'm really curious about your thoughts on religion now.
Oh my God, I was the worst as a child. I fucking spent like my 14 to 17-year-old going to forums and fighting Christians.
I'd love to understand your life. Tell me about your life. Like to give me this like a rundown, all the things that affected you, or, like made
Oh,
an
yeah, yeah.
imprint. Like give me your story.
Okay, so get born. That was great. Didn't realize that's a thing. Did not
Oh
ask
god.
for it. I was very pissed apparently. Came early somehow. Couple of months early. That's why I call myself a pre-cooked baby in some capacity. I'm like I was pre-baked. I was still raw, and they sent me out. I'm like, I did not get the production fixes and shit. They just sent me. Like I should have had the unit testing and all of that quality assurance shit. None of that
Uh,
happened. Got out. So early childhood was pretty fun. I think if I look back at like early memories based on also what I know, my mom and dad were extremely doting parents in the way that they work out. They were also extremely caring. So like imagine that when I'm sleeping in bed, my dad, like I would sleep in the middle, and at some point once I fell off the bed, like I rolled off. So after that, for the entirety of my childhood, which is like being a baby, I had pillows all around me as a fort because my father was scared that I would roll over again, which created
mm.
this habit where I have to have pillows when I sleep for till the end of time now because he created a fort and my brain got used to the fort, and I need to have a fort when I sleep now. So it's beautiful how that works out.
Yeah.
I grew up from that. Eventually, I'm a quiet kid. Apparently, in third or fourth grade, when my what do you call that? Like my report card comes back to my mom, and they sort of write in that your kid is very shy. You should help him open up more. Like I
Mm.
just don't talk at apparently. I just stay in the back of the class, shut the fuck up. And then she gets a report card the next year, which is I think in fifth standard or sixth, and she's like, does not shut up, please fucking do something. Please. He's disrupting all of us. Please fucking make him stop. So it's
Uh,
great. I made progress. But that's basically how early childhood works out. After that, it gets a little dark. Like, the thing that I had was dad is great. Like, he's a brilliant man. He's very kind. He's a good father. He's also an alcoholic. So he's also an idiot. So it's when he's alcoholic, he's not great as a father. He's actually really shit. And that
uh,
sort of plays a role where I think very early on I realized, wow, adults are pretty stupid actually. Not consistent, and you can't fucking they lie to you and all of that. So it's like I matured at a very early age. I think it also sort of led to a huge amount of disassociation with religion, because one of the things that would happen is, right, like early religion to a child is very binary and clear. It's like, who controls it? God. Who's the alpha
mm,
of this entire system? God. So if something
mm,
is fucked up, who do you go ask to fix? Fucking God, obviously. Fuck all of these other people in the middle. Why would you waste your time with that shit? So, because my biggest problem at that time was like my dad's an alcoholic, and that is a problem and it creates a lot of problems, I, as a child, in the innocence of a child, go, hello, my Lord Grand, whatever the fuck in that case, Krishna or whoever the fuck they taught me. I don't remember the names of those fuckers. It was very unclear. There were too many. Bring it down. Consolidate. Anyway,
yeah.
so I would pray to that thing, and I realized, like it's like, is there's no system. Like I tried variations of my praise. I tried optimizing the thing. I tried to modify the prayer so that like, is there a percentage where it works? Are there special words you have to use? And I'm like, it seems pretty inconsistent actually. Like praying here actually doesn't seem to work. Like I would do it in front of like the mandir thing that they had in the house. So then I started fucking switching it up a little bit. I'm a smart child.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, I will figure out, maybe I should pray at other things. I don't believe in this figurine. It's not working for me. So I started praying to random objects. So what I started doing was a
Mm,
game of probability and shit. Like the geyser light, when it goes on a specific time frame, I'll use that as a sign that I'm supposed to do something or not. And
uh,
it worked better. Like 50% of the time, I had a better fucking chance of that being a predictor. I
mm,
like that more. Then a really odd thing happened. I think I'm 8, okay? And between our living room and the hallway that goes to our bedroom, there are these tiles that have been cut into rectangles. All
mm,
the other tiles in the room are square. These are the only ones that are rectangles, and they're in the hall, in the doorway between the two areas. And I'm like, these tiles are interesting. I'm gonna pray to them. Why? Fuck it. Let's see. This is like the equivalent of like, how do you have that? Like the three test tubes. This is the control. Fucking let's try that. So what I would do was during festivals and shit, right? When they would have flowers and everything, I would get flowers and I would put it on the tiles. And I'm like, who is your
yeah.
god? These tiles are my god. And I did went around saying that to people. I'm like, who do you believe? And I've been praying to them. You should try. because because the thing that happened was the probability of it working out with the tiles was higher. I'm like, if I pray here, it seems to go better than if I pray over there. So my God better than your God, and it's just a pair of tiles, bitch. And
I'm
eventually,
dying.
I realized, it's not really working. I don't think this is working at all, actually. Like, I don't think the tiles give a shit. And eventually, from there, I think the disassociation from religion was strong enough where, a level of hypocrisy started showing up when I actually, I went, okay, listen, see, I get that the entire God shit. Let's actually look at the things people are praying, right? Like what are those things called? Like the shlokas and
Hmm.
what are those things? Like the prayers that they teach you. They teach you
The
these things.
mantras.
Om Bhur Bhavasva
Yeah.
Tatsavitur, whatever the fuck Sanskrit
Yeah.
bullshit, right? I'm like, okay, let's look at that. Like, what am I saying? What are they making me say? What are they saying to each other? What are they saying in front of this thing? And if you read those fucking things, they're really fucking pure, right? And the idea of it, they're like, I am a good human who follows the laws of, humanity, some weird shit. I want to do things that are good. I need help in these ways, some garbage. And I like when you listen to all of that, And like none of you are actually doing any of that. Like you have a guy who'll stand in front of the thing, fucking ring that tiny bell and go, I'm going to make sure that, I do these things and yada yada yada, and may the God be with me, and he's gonna go out there and fuck around with shit. He'll try to find a way of evading taxes. He's going to try and figure out how do I fuck my employee who wants to leave. How do I fucking screw with this fucking vegetable vendor? I want to pay 17 rupees. Why should I pay 19? I'm like, but you never said any of that in the fucking morning. Like, what
Oh
the
god.
fuck? So yeah, it's just like, it just became like a thing. Eventually, that led to a problem though. Because of the fact that if you give up on religion too early, right, you are already at odds with most of your surroundings because everybody's supposed to be a thing. This is a part of life. And I'm like, shit, I feel like an idiot. So eventually, at some point, I discovered the internet. And when I discovered the internet, I discovered the term of an atheist and all of that. And I'm like, holy shit, there are more. I didn't know there were more. Wow, there are people who don't believe in this shit. And I went through a bunch of years where I just basically would destroy people who were religious on a day-to-day basis, just poking holes in the thing. And yeah, it felt very nice back then. I was a very angry teenager. But I think the thing that did change, at least right now, if I look at it, I don't do that anymore. I think I understand why religion works the way it does. And I also understand why people, feel good when they go through those cycles. And I'm like, it's like poor man's therapy. Like, if you can't afford shit, go to God. Like at the end of the day, you have to take care of your mental health somehow. Like, if you can't afford a book and journal, just stand there and spit it out. It helps. That's why the Christians have the confession box. It's cheap therapy. Like, it's therapy without having to figure out how to do all of these other things related to mental health. Instead of going, I have trauma, you go, I have karma. It's the same thing. Whatever the fuck floats your boat. Like, but it works. And I don't shit on anyone who makes it work for them, because I'm like, it's hard. I've tried to go. There is this set of figures who apparently look like us and wear sexy clothing. Like Hindu mythology is weird. Like, they are all very sexualized. If you think about it, I appreciate that. That is very nice. Like, I actually consider the Mahabharata and Ramayana like softcore pornography for a generation that didn't have porn. Yeah, because you have buff guys walking around with like jewelry and shit, like fucking barely anything. Women with just like saris and high amounts of jewelry, and you're like, that is the only time you're seeing a mid rim. Where else are you seeing mid rims? The British made sure you're not. Like, it's supposed to be very sexy when you do that, so you're not supposed to see any of that. I'm like, that is the only way you can consume pornography. Look at fucking Parvati, she looks nice. Yeah, where else are you seeing anything else? You're not, except at weddings, which is also what we have. We save our best clothing for weddings. On a day-to-day basis, you're supposed to look like shit. Like, we would train for that.
Yeah.
Save the expensive cutlery for the guests. I'm like, no, I want to eat in ceramic. Why the fuck? Make the guest eat in the fucking stainless steel. The fuck?
The hypocrisy of the world. Oh god.
No, India. This is all India. This is fucking all just India. No, fuck. The world doesn't do that shit. We are fucked up. Nobody in anywhere will buy a plate of high quality and put it away to never use it. We will. Feel like we literally collect objects like action figures. Don't take it. Dude, I have a cousin. He would not remove the fucking the plastic that was there on his car's interiors. He's like, it will get old. I'm like, you are the dumbest fucker on the planet, actually. What do you mean? It looks like shit. It's been 4 years. You think it looks new because of it?
Oh god.
We have really weird beliefs. I don't think we believe in any of the gods. I think we believe in really dumb shit. Like, India has really bizarre ideas, which I don't know why we have, but I'm like, fuck the West, fuck the East, fuck the gods. We just need to sit for a while and go, what are the beliefs that India has? and it's a fucking book that you can write, and it gets weirder and weirder as you go further along.
Yeah, and then it gets weirder in that there's many Indias inside India, and each one
Exactly.
has its.
Like each one has their own versions of it. And I'm like, no, listen, just we need to contemplate this shit. And I'm not
Yeah.
shitting on any of it. I'm like, all of them have relevant social histories of why they came about. Like, I understand why my mom saves like plastic packets because, hey, plastic was expensive. Now it's everywhere. I understand why they try to fight for 10 rupees because in their time, for 10 rupees, you could get a bunch of shit. It never fucking recalibrated in their head. They're still operating at 10 rupees.
Mm.
You have the same thing apply for shit like technology where they don't understand what it does. Most of the time, they're like, I don't know why this needs to be thing. But my problem is if you combine that, right, like ignorance with the stupidity of the fact that I can do no wrong, that's where the beautifulness happens. Where an Indian parent will not only say, I am stupid, but they'll go, not only am I not stupid, but everything I say is the truth. And if you go against it, you're wrong. And that's what stops generations of people actually making better decisions. Like I know family members who have houses where technology has not made an impact because the patriarch of the family went, no, I don't like it. And the same thing applies for cultural values too. Like if you imagine having a discussion about LGBTQ with a lot of our family members,
Oh my
fuck
god.
LGBTQ. Imagine discussing relationships with them. They can't.
Ugh.
They're not capable of understanding what dating is. And like, we should take all of those people, put them in a box, and give it to a Nazi. Let them handle it. They're like, hey, you discovered an oven situation. We have a bunch of people. We call them
Yeah.
old people, our parents. Take them.
Yeah.
And the good part is that I don't think Nazis would take them either. They would get frustrated and send them back. They're like, our ovens are fucking, we don't want this shit. They're too critical of the ovens. They're talking dumb shit, yo. Take them back. Like the morale of the fucking people trying to kill them is way too down. They kill the vibe, yo. Just send them back. We don't want them. You keep them. You figure out how to kill them. We don't want it.
Oh god. Like, I want to feed into this a bit more. Like, what are the worst and best things about India?
Like I think the best is the diversity for sure. Like I really, really like that there's so many Indias because you can go literally anywhere and you'll find different versions of it. I
Yeah.
think the other good parts are the sheer amount of cuisine that we get out of that, the variation of food. Nowhere in the world does it get even close. Like we fucking nail food.
Nah.
Like no country can fucking stand close to India and go, I can do it better. Ah, you fuck off. Not even close.
Yeah.
Not even in my area.
Yeah, and
And
I stand by that because I've been around. I've traveled a lot around Europe and since I was a kid, and really like nowhere comes close to India. India is the best
exactly.
place for food.
Yep. And that is something that I really, really appreciate. Even besides that, I think at least fundamentally one of the things I realized, if you look at the history of the thing, it's like most of the population has been fucked over by everyone. Like, okay, if you look at the stories, right, which is the reason I've started reevaluating a lot of our mythology, is that the Ramayana and Mahabharata are the equivalent of a soap opera having been an interaction between two extremely entitled rich families that nobody should give a fuck about. Fuck those people. Like the Kauravas and the fucking Pandavas, they're the cream of society controlling kingdoms and shit. They're not the population. We don't have the equivalent of fucking the Lagan story from then. We don't know what's happening to the farmers. We don't know what it's like to be a fucking daily citizen of this kingdom. We have a story of a bunch of dumb cunts trying to rape whatever the fucking lady who had that long fucking sari thing was. Sita. No? Sita? No. Maybe. No, that is probably me mixing up Ramayana, Mahabharata, whoever that fucking bitch was.
Yeah,
But yeah, and if in variation you look at the other side, I'll probably get fucking death threats and shit if you put this out, which would be great.
bro, both
Anyway,
of us. Like both of us. I'm laughing at this shit. My parents are gonna axe me when I get home. Like, because
but
somehow it will make it to my mother, and she will lose her fucking mind. And I'm just
yeah,
like,
like
I can't even explain it to you. What's the point? And my
anyway.
dad, Bhagwan.
So what I'm trying to get at is that these are not stories of the daily citizenry. Like we don't have Instagram back then. We don't have fucking Facebook. Nobody knows what the fuck daily people are going through. They're not
Yeah.
supposed to talk. They're supposed to follow the laws of the kingdom. And if you go further ahead, it doesn't actually change. Like if you look at the Buddha, right, and they call him a prince, I'm like, fucking shit. Okay, when you call the Buddha the prince, India was made up of princely states. Every fucking region had 10 princes. And what was a prince? A prince was a fucker who owned a set of land that controlled the population inside of it. He was the feudal lord and he controlled the assets in that fucking thing. It's basically rich fuckers with armies. All the princes were literally rich people with money and armies. And there were a
Mm.
lot of them. The Buddha was a privileged fuck. He was a good fuck. Privileged fuck. Like, he's not the daily generic population. And I'm like, if you go through the thing continuing in history after that, every generation of people, the stories that we hear are again of these privileged cunts, not the actual day to day people. That happens after the British leave. So
Mm.
the thing that I at least see with colonization, right? The British are fucked up and they're some of the worst people on the face of the earth and they should not exist. But because they fucking did the shit that they did, it led to this idea of creation of a centralized entity called India. And if I look at it, right now is the only time where we have a level of equality, at least in the way that we function because of capitalism. Positives.
Mm.
Horrible, but still equal. Like tomorrow, if there was a Dalit who had a crore, the Brahmin would fucking kneel over in a second. He's like, "You are my Lord and Savior, sir. What do I do for you?" Which I appreciate, you know. Like one of the
Yeah.
things I appreciate about capitalism is it fucking gives a nice finger to the socio-economic hierarchy difference that comes from the Indian caste system. Because if you do make money, everybody bends, which is great. At least there is a fix. It's horrible, but there's a fix. Which is slightly weird. I have a picture of a Brahmin getting fucked by someone just because they have money, and I understand that because they already do that. Like if you go
Mm.
to Africa and you look up like a lot of the regimes that are really fucked up, you'll find this Indian fucker standing behind there in most of them. A
Mm.
business trader who is from India who went to Africa.
Mm.
This
Mm.
fucking random Indian name that'll come that's associated with the family. There's Guptas in fucking the Congo, and you're like, what are you doing there, Mr. Gupta? Mr. Gupta is selling weird shit and he's making money.
Mm. Man, this
Yeah,
is
it's so
crazy.
much fun because this is something that no one will discuss, by the way, because the idea is that this is something that I also saw during the pandemic. Like when, what was the fucking name of the thing? Clubhouse was the thing, right? So I had a bunch
Mm-hmm.
of friends who are also Instagram friends and all of that. And you could discuss anything in the world. You could shit on any country. You could shit on whatever the fuck you want. You could discuss anything in any capacity. And everybody's like, hey, as soon as you go, hey, listen, what about the fucking caste system shit? You know, fucking the Brahmin shit and this fucking entire thing is fucked up. Their voices would immediately go a little bit down and they're like, hey, we're not supposed to talk like that. Ah, like, oh my god, you're one of them. What the fuck? This is a fucking human of my age who immediately flips as soon as you touch anything associated with it. I'm like,
Yeah.
fascinating. Why? That is something
Yeah.
that we were taught in school is fucked up. We know it continues to exist. We know the families do it when they're getting married. We know they do it when it comes to how they decide to create relationships. Why the
Mm.
fuck are we not talking about it? And if you're unwilling to talk about it, are you a part of the system? Or are you basically saying it doesn't affect me enough?
Yeah. Man, you bring up such a good point. Like, even in this conversation, I was thinking, man, if we put this out there, of course, the hate will be there. But if we don't do that, we are feeding into this same fucking narrative.
Exactly.
And
Which is the reason,
there's
like,
a point when you just have to take a stand. It's like, listen. It's not
yeah,
serving you, you dumb fuck. Like,
exactly. No, no,
like,
no. So this is funny. A lot of people are getting served by it. So that is the reason it's a little sad. So a lot of the
fair enough.
friends
Yeah.
that said, hey, we're not supposed to talk about it like that, are the ones who are a part of the privileged. They are the
Mm.
ones who are from the caste who will be negatively impacted if these privileges went away. And I'm like, oh my God, you are not a friend. You are at the end of the day conditioned
Mhm.
and you are a part of the problem. I think it's also the other side of it where the reason they're unwilling to discuss it is purely financial. Where the, okay, so if you look at the caste system, the biggest aspect of it that I get as a takeaway from the thing is it's primarily about controlling resources and manpower. If theoretically you have someone who is the equivalent of a cleaner at the bottom of the pyramid of responsibilities,
Mm.
that is what we consider at the bottom of the pyramid. Uh,
Yeah.
you want to make sure that they continue to show up for the job every day and they're willing to do it day after day, again and again. And because we don't have a clean way of doing
Mm.
that, the shittiest way of doing it is to pay them a salary that is just enough to make them survive, but not enough for them to break out of that cycle. So you have them show up, you remove all
Hmm.
rights, you remove all information, and you make sure that they stay at that threshold as long as possible. So over the course of generations, it works because you can then stratify it in whatever capacity, and you can continue to do that till the end of time. Plus, if you attach it to business, it's great. It's like depending on the caste that you come from, specific professions are open to you, specific professions are not. I am like, I know caste system is fucked up, but the beautifulness of them fucking everyone over in such a good way, I'm like, I have to give it to them. It's so well done. Like it's optimized brutality. I'm like, the Nazis have nothing on us. Like shitty. Like, why go after the Jews? Just make the Jews hate themselves. like don't kill them, just make them give up their rights and become slaves.